It's only a matter of time for the Pac-12, right? That's what I keep seeing. That's what I keep hearing. And that is the overwhelming narrative out there that the days are numbered for the Pac-12. I am not reporting that. I am not reporting that in any such way. Am I refuting that? No, no, no. You know what we get here with the Voice of College Football. I pull together the resources. Some are valid. Some may be proved to be invalid at some point. But as long as I believe that there is a reasonable notion to believe that they're valid at this point, I pull together all the resources. And you know how we've approached this expansion and realignment topic ever since Oklahoma and Texas left the Big 12 for the SEC. And then 1 year later, from summer to summer of 21 to 22, of course, USC and UCLA to the Big 10. I've approached it this way to say, these are the brands, these are the programs, these are the institutions and the football programs, these are the TV markets, these are all the variables involving all these conferences and all of these schools. Here are their strengths, here are their weaknesses, here is what appears to be likely based on all those factors. Anytime you've got a situation like this, you have those with leverage and you have those without leverage. And then there are scenarios that can play out that change that landscape of leverage versus lack of leverage, or to be on the downside of the leverage equation. But that's difficult. Once you've lost leverage, it's difficult to gain it back. So we will go through the latest in terms of reporting here, and we will dive into the expansion and realignment talk involving the Pac-12 and whether it's going to be, it's either going to be a stabilized Pac-12 as it currently stands with the 10 schools that it currently has, then adding San Diego State and SMU and a new halfway decent. It's not going to be a substantial in light of the other conferences. It's not going to match up with the other conferences, but a substantial media deal that should be evaluated not just based on the overall amount of dollars coming in, but also on the platforms that are going to be in partnership with the Pac-12. So that's one scenario, that the Pac-12, that is the best case scenario for the Pac-12, that they keep their current 10, they add the 2 in the Dallas and San Diego markets, and they get a decent media deal. That's the very best. The other various scenarios involve, of course, the Four Corner schools, involve the Oregon, Washington losses to either the Big 10 or the Big 12, a media deal that is not sufficient to keep those schools, whether that's 2 of them, 4 of them, 6 of them, 8 of them. It appears as though only Oregon State and Washington State are those schools that are not being talked about leaving the conference, unless, of course, there's no conference left to stay, and then they'll go to the Mountain West Conference, you would think. So there are various stages of compromise and demise for the Pac-12. And at some point, there's a tipping point that they simply cannot maintain their status as a Power 5 conference, or a conference maybe at all. I would not be surprised if the Pac-12 dissolved. I would not be surprised if there was a Pac-12 that was still a remnant of itself of a few years ago, and they were able to maintain. So I laid out the best case scenario. Obviously, the worst case scenario is they implode and they're gone and they're done, and their member schools are playing in either the Big 10, the Big 12, or the Mountain West in 3 to 4 years, let's say. Okay. We'll take a call right here at the Voice of College Football, but we do have a number of things to get to. I did want to address an article by Dennis Dodd on CBS Sports concerning conference realignment and expansion and the latest. There's not necessarily anything new in regards to anything that's not been heard, but there are, based on his sources, which are not, some of them are anonymous, some of them are not specific individuals, but they are companies and organizations that confirm the Big 12 and its pursuits, and also confirm the weakening position of the Pac 12. If you believe Dennis Dodd in his reporting, I cannot vouch for him other than I know who the man is. I know what his role is. I don't know what his past work has been. I'm guessing it's been fairly valid because he still has a prominent position in college football media. We also want to go with what was the original headline of our live stream tonight. And that's, of course, if you've listened to us here at the Voice of College Football for any substantial period of time, you know that I would like to be able to forecast those teams that are going to take big jumps or big declines this season. 65 in the Power 5 last season. That's been raised to 69 with the 4 schools that have entered the Big 12. So we now have 69 Power 5 teams, and 27 of them, this is a remarkable number to me, 27 of them either had a jump of 3, at least 3 wins, or a decline of at least 3 wins from 2021 to 2022. And so to be able to pinpoint, let's say that happens again, 27 Power 5 teams have that type of upgrade or downgrade in their play and performance and results. Can we find 27 teams? Now, typically, since I've been charting this statistic, and of course, you can go all the way back to the beginning of time to chart it, but I've looked at it. The reason I started to look at this was because of the rather conservative predictions of our friends at places like Street and Smith's and Athlon's and all the preseason publications. For as fine a job as they do, they are extremely conservative with their predictions. So they are unable, they either do this for a number of reasons. It could be one, that they don't want to look bad. So if you go into a season and you're predicting Ohio State, Georgia, Alabama, and Clemson to be in the college football playoff, and they're not, nobody's going to go crazy. But if you go out on a limb, i.e. Desmond Howard, and you predict Texas A&M, Pitt, Baylor, the likes of those 3 schools to wind up in the college football playoff, then you look like a fool. And so for an entire publication to do that and try to project a TCU to go to the playoffs, a Cincinnati to go to the college football playoffs, and then it doesn't happen, you look foolish. But if you stay conservative, then nobody's going to fault you. So that's one theory that I have. Either they just don't want to look silly, or they just don't have the vision to see what combination of a coach, a quarterback, upgrades in recruiting class and transfer portal could push a team in a positive direction or in the negative direction. All right, let's take our first call of the night. Then we'll dive into all of these matters here at the Voice of College Football. Let's see. We got Christian on the line. Christian, what's going on tonight?
Yep, Christian Ballard Sports Media. What's up, Mark?
Not too much. I'm doing well. How are you?
Good. I actually wanted to bring up an article to you. I'm not sure if you saw it. It was put out 2 days ago on Athlon Sports from Michelle Ford. I'm not sure how you say his or her name, but a former ESPN president had suggested, because we got all this conference realignment. And by the way, in case anyone's wondering when it starts, it actually starts this year with UCF and BYU, Houston, and Cincinnati going to the Big 12. But a former ESPN president had suggested that the ACC and the Pac-12 should merge their conferences. What do you think about that? And I mean, is that part of the direction we're going in college football, where not only are we seeing teams move from different conferences, we could possibly see some mergers?
So, first of all, I'm curious, who is the president of ESPN? Do they have a name there?
Yeah. It was a former president, uh, John Skipper.
Oh, John Skipper.
I'm not
Absolutely.
sure I've heard that
All
name.
right. Yeah, I know John Skipper. All right. I was just curious as to who that was. I figured that I would know who that was. And when I say that, I'm not personal
Okay.
friends with the man. I've met him a few times. So anyway, I was just curious. So the situation in the Pac-12 seems to be dire. The situation in the ACC seems to be dire depending on what you believe about the grant of rights and its invincibility. Because if that is a binding, uh, no holds barred contract that can't be broken, as is reported by many, and people that have legal backgrounds that have looked into it, that I have no reason not to trust. I won't say that I trust them because I haven't seen their work over and over, but I've got no reason not to trust them. So the Pac-12's in immediate danger because they're working on
Right.
a media deal that doesn't look competitive. So they're in immediate danger. The ACC has a lot more time to deal with their situation because even if this grant of rights can be challenged, it's not going to fall apart tomorrow. That's going to take a lot of litigation and a lot of effort and a lot of cooperation between schools in the ACC.
Right.
But if the Pac 12 can somehow hold it together, if the Pac 12 does hold it together, but still sees itself as vulnerable, and then the ACC determines that it's vulnerable, then if the only way that those two leagues believe that they can survive is to merge, then yeah, I can see that happening. And I could also see that happening maybe as we get closer to 2036, because even if the grant of rights is ironclad, the ACC is so far behind financially, but behind the SEC and the Big Ten, that I don't see how they are going to be able to put themselves in a good position when that contract runs out to keep their best schools. So this may not happen like 3 months from now, but this may be something that we see in the next 5 to 6 years.
Oh yeah, it wouldn't surprise me. I mean, you mentioned, trying to keep their best teams, especially Clemson, because part of the conference realignment, I mean, I don't know, I doubt it was you, but someone brought up like, oh, what if Clemson were to leave the ACC, and what if they lost? I mean, they probably wouldn't lose teams like Miami and Florida State. Let's say if like Clemson were to leave the ACC, the only two teams that would be keeping it alive would be Florida State, Miami, um, and the rest of the ACC is just. I mean, I'm not here to make this into a diss or anything, but I mean, those teams are what they are in the
Yeah, they
ACC.
don't
So,
make money in football. They don't make
right,
substantial money. Of course, they make millions of dollars, but they don't make money enough for media platforms to recognize them.
absolutely. So I just had saw this article and was curious if you had saw it too and wanted to
Well,
get
I
your
didn't need to
thoughts
see
on it.
that because that's been talked about a lot and I've mentioned it. I've produced content on it. So, and I certainly didn't come up with the original idea. So I don't know where that originally came from, but that's
Right.
been, I don't know when the first time I heard that possibility, probably 9 or 10 months ago.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Mark, you always put out great content. I always look forward to watching it, and thanks as always for having me on.
Thank you, Christian. Have a good night. Appreciate the call.
Thank you.
All right, we will keep it moving right here at the Voice of College Football. And again, topic number one is realignment and expansion, and the latest that we will get into here from various sources. And then also, again, 27 teams. Maybe that doesn't strike other people as aggressive, but egregious. 27 of 65 Power 5 teams last year had a much different season. They upgraded significantly or downgraded significantly from the previous season. So who are those teams going to be this year? We got David Greenshield on the line.
Yeah. Well, I really wonder if this is going to be for the betterment of the sport, Mark, to be honest with you. Um, I had my doubts to begin with, but this is what happens when the SEC throws the first stone. Which, where would we be if the SEC did not acquire Texas and Oklahoma right now?
The most recent round of this.
Yes. I mean, because if Texas and Oklahoma does not acquire, or if the SEC does not acquire Texas and Oklahoma, does the Big Ten make the move to get USC and UCLA? Bottom
No,
line.
because I don't think that, and I don't know that for sure, but my heavy lean is no, because I
Okay.
don't believe that the Big Ten wants to be perceived as that kind of entity.
Right. Basically, the bottom line to me is, and I believe you've talked about this before, but let's just put it out here one more time, which is the SEC made their power move to get Texas and Oklahoma. And the Big Ten says, okay, if you're going to push your chips into the table, we're going to make our power move. We've got no choice but to react. And if we're going to get one program that is at a higher level than Texas and Oklahoma, that's going to be USC. And then UCLA is a very solid program as of right now, especially after what it achieved last year. So, you know what? It's also destroyed programs, because what is a conference once they lose their anchor programs, right?
Absolutely, you're right. But the only reason I presented a pushback on that was this is the most recent round of this. Of course, we have a much different landscape and configuration of college football going back 35 and 40 years.
Sure.
We've had the ACC gobble up the Big East. So the ACC basically destroyed the Big East. The Big 12 had a couple schools picked off by the SEC a decade ago. They had a few run to the Pac-12. So the Pac-12 had its expansion run with a couple of schools from the Group of Five and the Big 12. The Big Ten's had its hand in taking a school from the Big 12 and a school from both the ACC and the Big East just 10 or 12 years ago.
Yeah, I just think that, well, first of all, I actually do think the Big 12 can survive. Of the two conferences, the Pac-12 and the Big 12, more likely to endure this, you would say, would be the Big 12, correct?
Oh, yeah.
I don't think it's even close.
No, it's not close.
But I mean, Cincinnati in the Big 12, Mark, are you serious?
And when you say that, you're talking about geography, not that they're
Yeah,
not
I mean, it just,
up
I
to
mean,
it otherwise. Well, West Virginia is in the Big 12.
right. I don't know. It just sounds off to me. Well, Texas and Oklahoma. Well, I guess you know what, the SEC people can say that Texas is already in their footprint to begin with because they already have Texas A&M.
I think any reasonable college football fan that cares about tradition
Right.
and I made some kind of grand speech, at least for me, when this was all kind of coming apart here in the last couple of years, to basically say this is college football, and at its core, these conferences, I believe, should represent styles and types of lifestyles that are inherent in that part of the country.
Right.
The just the way of values and music and food and all the things that go along with the actual game on the field, and that even goes into the style of play at times. All those things meant something at some point, because yes, Texas was not a part of the SEC. Of course, Texas A&M, before
Right.
them joining. Texas, if you would have mentioned Texas in the SEC or any Texas schools in the SEC 40 years ago, people would have thought you were crazy because that was Southwest territory. The SEC is the Southeast,
Right.
and Texas is
Exactly.
the Southwest. And Texas, Arkansas, all the Texas schools, Oklahoma schools, that's just, I just love the regional feel and the fabric of all of it has been nearly ripped apart. Certainly the Big Ten still has its core. The SEC still, for the most part, makes sense and still has its same core members. But yeah, Cincinnati in the Big 12. The Big 12 is Kansas State,
Hmm.
Oklahoma State. It's the Plains, the Midwest. It's not
Yeah.
Cincinnati,
I mean, basically, and I'm not
UCF.
saying, right. Long and short of what I'm saying is, I mean, Texas, Oklahoma going to the SEC. Maybe I shouldn't say that was the first stone to be thrown, because maybe Texas A&M coming over into the SEC probably was where, this is also another area where this also got started to begin with as well. The Big Ten getting Rutgers and Maryland. Rutgers and Maryland never necessarily felt right. Well, I guess you can say the Big Ten has always had like kind of a footprint in the East Coast, though, to a certain extent, even before Rutgers and Maryland got there, right?
Well, if we go back to the point that we started to watch Big Ten football, Columbus, Ohio was the westernmost campus in the Big Ten.
Right. Well, then Penn State in '93, though,
Sure.
and Penn State has always had like an East Coast feel to it.
Absolutely.
So once you added them,
I'm not disagreeing with you. I just think, yeah, it's been slowly picked apart. But yes, that Oklahoma Texas move was
yeah,
major, was
it
way
was.
beyond anything we've seen before because of, and if the Big 12 had not been able to counter with the four schools that it did, which in no way make up for Oklahoma and Texas, we were talking about the Big 12 in the same manner that people are talking about the Pac 12 right now. That was the rhetoric, as you well know, surrounding the Big 12 after those two losses, because there was all talk about various conferences, the Big Ten included, grabbing Kansas because of their basketball,
Hmm.
and Iowa State and others. And then if
Right.
you've got an 8-team conference and then a couple schools get picked off, well, it's going to, they were in a precarious situation there with 8 schools for whatever that was, 6 to 8, 10 weeks. Um, and they were able to go get the best options available and stabilize themselves. And I think they're very much in a stable situation. I might be wrong, but I truly believe the Big 12's fine. It would behoove them to go out if the Pac 12 is available, if those schools are available. And even if it doesn't increase the value of the TV contract to increase the revenue for the existing schools in the Big 12, I still think it's the move to make to broaden your footprint, get more Power 5 brand schools, Arizona State, etc. Broadens the recruiting footprint, the TV footprint, more TV markets. And if you can't challenge the SEC and the Big Ten at the top, you can challenge them in a sense, not that they're going to, but in sheer numbers. In sheer numbers.
Well, here's what I was going to say, and I've mentioned this to you, I believe before, but again, as a Big Ten fan, I'm totally excited about having a conference with Ohio State, USC, Penn State, the team up north. 4 of the 5 or 6 greatest programs. Well, Penn State's probably at least in the top 10 programs in the history of college football. And then Nebraska as well, although Nebraska has declined. Let's see what Matt Rule can do. But 5 of the top 10 programs in the history of the sport in one conference. As a Big Ten guy, Mark, I'm okay with that. But what is this sport, Mark? It's always been about what are the haves and the have-nots. And there's always been tiers in the sport. Programs are at this level or they're at that level. We've talked about this many times before. And what are these programs or what are these conferences going to look like once they lose those anchor programs and all they're left with is a bunch of mid-tier programs or lower level programs? I mean, how do you exist as a conference?
Yeah, I really don't know because, let's take this down the road of the Pac-12 existing, maintaining its 10 schools, and then they add San Diego State and SMU, and they don't really add value. They're not a disaster, but they're like adding, from a playing standpoint, like adding Maryland and Rutgers to the Big Ten. They're winning 5 and 6 games a year. They're just inconsequential. And they're really not bringing in the type of viewership out of 2 NFL cities that is substantial. They're just placeholders. If the SEC and the Big Ten in particular, and the Big 12 to a lesser extent, because they don't have as much pull and leverage, are okay with a really weak Pac-12 champion participating in the playoff, and the committee, probably the more and more that league shows that it can't compete with the others, it has its one seat at the table. Maybe it gets a second team into the playoff and it gets its brains beat in because let's just face it, it's been at times the weakest conference in college football over the last 10 years, and things are not going to get better when you lose your best programs and you're only feeding those other programs $20 and $22 million a year compared to 80 and 90 elsewhere. It's just going to continue to unravel on the field, that you're basically going to be allowing a Mountain West caliber conference to play in the playoff. And I don't know if the SEC and the Big Ten will be okay with that.
Well, remember what I said to you before, Mark. I mean, are these programs trending towards the Big East? How we laughed at remember how we laughed at the Big East champion, and the Big East champion we would talk about was getting destroyed in the BCS all those years. That's when I'm wondering if those conferences are going that direction. Maybe back, remember in the 90s when the Big Eight and then the Southwestern Conference, formed the Big 12. Nobody actually, well, it was made a big deal at the time, but everybody thought that was going to be like a super conference too at the time. Remember that, Mark?
Yeah, it did look like it was going to be, and it was a really good conference, but not a super conference. And they booted, let's see, TCU got the heave ho, and Houston got the heave ho.
Right.
I guess they are the two that come to mind. I don't think of anyone else. SMU got the heave ho.
Yeah. But you consolidated Texas A&M, Texas, Oklahoma, Nebraska at the time, who was a power program, obviously in the 90s.
Yeah.
And everybody thought that, wow, that, all that together was going to be awesome. And, the Southwestern Conference was like the power program, if I'm not mistaken, in the 80s, right, Mark?
The Southwest Conference?
Yeah, the Southwestern Conference. Yeah.
Well,
it's pretty strong.
Oh, it was strong. It wasn't the conference, though. There was no the conference.
Well, I mean, back when SMU was really, really strong, Texas was pretty strong in the 80s. You had some, I mean, Arkansas had some good teams at that particular period of time. You had some good programs in the old Southwestern Conference.
Yeah, it was a good conference, but it wasn't the best conference. Like, there was no best conference.
That's true.
Like,
I don't ever.
Sure, year to year, you could argue, okay, well, this year it's the SEC. This year it's the Big Ten. This year it's the Pac-12, the Pac-10. But that didn't exist until the mid-2000s.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, we actually, like, I remember a period of time following college football in the 90s, even in the early 2000s, where we did not have these discussions. These lines in the sand between these two conferences were not discussed as much. or it wasn't as, big a topic of conversation
Oh,
as I
who had the
remember.
best conference?
Yeah. Like, I mean, I don't remember, like, let's say in 1998, it being, well, or maybe there's not being as huge a chasm of difference between the conferences.
Oh, not at all.
Yeah.
So for me, and maybe I'm not the best example, it's always been a topic of conversation. I have always
Okay.
considered it one, but what was fun was you didn't know who the best conference was. We could have debated that, if we're sitting here and it's 1988, we'd be arguing all off season over who has the best conference. And no one would be able to definitively prove that their conference was the best conference. Now we don't have those discussions because the SEC is the best conference.
Sure. Yeah. Absolutely.
And I will say one thing, David, to defend the SEC. By all accounts, Oklahoma and Texas approached the SEC.
Okay. Yeah, it wasn't just the SEC, presidents and Sankey that were just reaching out. I agree. I agree. Not that it necessarily worked out for the betterment of the sport, though, Mark. I mean, I think we can.
No, I don't think it's for the betterment of the sport. But as I've said here many times, Greg Sankey's not employed by college football. He's employed by the SEC.
That's true. He has to answer to those presidents. Yeah, he does. Yeah. Well, it's going
I
to be.
thought,
Go
I
ahead.
thought, I'm sorry, David. I thought for a time when we were faced with a pandemic and Kevin Warren was talking a certain, well, he shut down the sport. Let's just
Yes,
face it. He actually went
he
out
did.
there to actually announce that the Big Ten was not playing. The Pac-12 did the same. I thought, there was a time when for a couple weeks there that the SEC might just play college football that year and no one else is going to play and the SEC is going to play and some people are going to feel that to be a pretty legitimate college football season because they're winning all the championships anyway. And I just envisioned this. Well, the SEC is going to play. People are going to feel to various degrees that it might be a fairly legitimate season, and at least they're providing a football fix, and they're going to even further fortify themselves as the conference. But
Well,
that
I
didn't
mean,
happen.
Kevin Warren was in a tough spot, and I'm no Kevin Warren fan by any stretch of the imagination. We've had that discussion before, Mark. I actually, the more and more I think about it, I mean, it was the Big Ten presidents that didn't want it. I
Yes.
mean, let's just be real. They handled that thing like a hand grenade. They wanted no part of it, and it was really only Ohio State, Nebraska, as I remember, the programs at the time that stood up and say, "Hey, we want to play some football."
Yeah, they were the two. They were the two that were adamant. They were the two that were out in front, and the working class won that battle.
Yeah, yeah,
I hate to put it in those terms, but the administrators and the academia did not want to play, but parents, fans, coaches, players got together and pushed and pushed and pushed.
yeah. The parents even had a hard time going to games that year. That was also a travesty with the way that was handled.
Yeah, the only thing I fault Kevin Warren for there, and
Well, it was a bad look for him, though, Mark. Remember, because he had his son playing at Mississippi State at the
well,
time.
yeah, but
And, he's
but
out there trying to sell a thing where he's got his own boy playing at Mississippi State. And he's saying, well, we can't play football here in the Midwest.
yes, absolutely, absolutely, and I guess without knowing what the conversations are behind closed doors, I can't completely definitively say this, but I do blame him for making an announcement when obviously the decision had not been finally made. I don't know how you go out and make that announcement that we're not playing when obviously there were still options there.
Yeah. Well, and what we got out of it was a half-ass season anyway, Mark. It was,
Yeah.
so. All right, Mark. Well, it was always an interesting conversation. We're going to be back with, you going to do another live stream this weekend, or is it Big Ten Talk on Monday?
Oh, I don't know what to tell you there, David.
Okay.
We may be back this weekend, but definitely on Monday at 6 p.m. Eastern. Yes.
All right. Well, either way, I'll be back with you then, my friend.
I appreciate it, David.
Have a good one, Mark.
All righty.
You too.
Bye-bye. It's our guy, David Greenshield. Let's catch this super chat right here and get to our next call. We've got Georgia Reload. Love to see these Georgia fans. Here we go. Back-to-back championships. Georgia, Alabama, and Tennessee have always been the staple of the SEC. There might be some folks in Louisiana and Florida that might argue with that, but I don't like all these changes. I'm an old man. Get off my lawn. At least the changes are not threatening your team or any of the teams that you compete with there, Georgia Reload. But thank you so much for the contribution. Appreciate that. Look at this. Got our guy Joey stopping by tonight.
Hey, buddy. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing good. I had to adjust my soundboard. Sorry about that. I'm sorry, I'm just getting here. I was in another show and talking college football as well. And we were talking over there about a lot of things, about conference realignment, but we were also talking NIL as well. And so I made the NIL point about NIL is great. Yes, players deserve to be paid, but it should come from NIL projects, such as if their name, image, or likeness is used on a piece of clothing and sold, they should get a percentage of it, and not this big money that you're getting to come and sit on a bench and then transfer somewhere else. But I know that's not what you're talking about here.
Well, we can talk about anything, Joey. So continue.
But that was one thing we were talking about over there, and that was my point. Is that I'm okay with NIL. I think the players should get paid. I'm not okay with this new California trying to pass through this law that says 50% of the revenue from California schools has to go to the athletes. I'm not for that. I'm not for NIL deals in excess of, if they're going to be $1 million deals, let them pay for their own education. Teach them some responsibility. We was talking about that. How
do you
these are
legislate that, though, Joey? Like in principle,
I know.
I agree with you in principle, Joey. But we live in a capitalist society and a free society. Right. How do you put a cap on how much? That would be like saying, I think Mark. University. That would be like saying, I think a YouTuber shouldn't make so much money, so we're going to put a cap on it. Well, why? Right. Why? You should be able to make as much money as people are willing to pay. So if there are collectives out there that are willing to give a 5-star quarterback who's never thrown a pass in college, and as long as there is a trade there, the understanding is name, image, and likeness. So they are doing work for that work. It's not real work necessarily, but it's in this day and age work. So they are being the face of some kind of campaign on Instagram, or they're providing some value in return. That's
it's
the
like
deal.
If I had a YouTube channel, Mark, and I invited you over to my YouTube channel and said, I'll give you $1,000 to come over and be a guest on there. That's name, image, and likeness, right? I want Mark Rogers' name and image and likeness on the channel. There's none of that going on right now in college football. I mean, there's a little bit, yes. Players are getting image and likeness, and they're doing their little advertisement. But there's nothing making them stay at that university to where they don't have. They could bolt anytime, right?
We'll see
and
again,
the
Joey.
NCAA is spelling on this point to take control of this situation because they're so scared because they've been sued so much that they're scared to make any kind of a reaction to this over indulgence, if you will, of NIL.
Okay, I think that this could be better structured and could be cleaned up in a few different ways. Number one, there's a distinction between NIL for the student athlete in college versus making it a recruiting enticement. It is illegal for it to be a recruiting enticement. So that's the first thing we need to get a handle on. If there's any evidence that it's a recruiting enticement, and I don't think there's any question out there that it's a recruiting enticement. Now, there's nothing wrong with five-star quarterback going to X number of schools, and those schools basically letting them know, hey, we have an NIL collective or two or three, and here they are, and just providing that information, and then leaving it up to the student athlete to make connections with other guys to find out, okay, how good are those collectives? How much can I possibly make? But the school and the collectives should not be engaged in negotiations with the athlete until they've signed a letter of intent, enrolled at the school, and started classes. Then you let them know, okay, here's our NIL collective. So that's the one thing that's being violated constantly. It appears
Right.
that it's a recruiting enticement. It's not supposed to be. Number two issue is the one thing we were just talking about, is that there's supposed to be some reciprocation of some kind of work. You're supposed to be doing something for this money. It's not supposed to be because you're playing football. Now, obviously, you gain the fame and the recognition because you're playing football, but you're not getting paid to play. You're getting paid for, yes, appearing on a podcast or putting your picture, drinking nice tea on Instagram or whatever the case might be. And I bring that up because Bo Nix was the first one that I remember with an NIL deal, and it was some kind of Alabama iced tea company. So those would be the two things, and then there was a third that I lost at some point, but I'll get it back.
A lot of it too. I think they need to get rid of the pay for play rule. So they can't make these NIL deals tied to a university. They can't say, so as an example, my team, West Virginia, can't go out and recruit a player and say, hey, the NIL collective is going to pay you $100,000 a year so long as you play for West Virginia University. They can't do that, right? They can tell them, we're going to pay you $100,000 a year, but it's not tied to the university. But that's all they can do. I think they have to get rid of the pay for play rule to advance this from the get-go, to even start getting some control over NIL. Get rid of the pay for play rule, so teams can tie a player to university. Who like Quinn Ewers, right? He come to Ohio State, sat on the bench for a year, made millions of dollars, took off to Texas, right? So the people in Ohio, around Columbus area, they got nothing out of that. The people that sponsored him really got nothing out of that. And they lost.
So I'm glad you brought that up, Joey. That was my third point. Thank you for the reminder. But as I see it, that, unless somebody knows better, that is the issue of the collective. The collective needs to say, okay, we are signing the West Virginia quarterback for $100,000 a year, as long as he is the West Virginia quarterback. And so here's your $100,000. You're going to, appear down at Joe's car lot, every Saturday, and you're going to do these Instagram links and whatever the stipulation is, and we're going to pay you $100,000. Oh, you transferred. Well, that was $100,000 for a year. You were only here for 6 months. You got to pay back $50,000, and it's in the contract right here. I blame the collectives for not covering themselves.
I do too. But at the same time, I'm wondering if they're worried about the pay for play rule and getting the university in trouble. And that's why they're not putting that in there, because the pay for play rule would make them not put that in there. Do you agree?
That's the first time I've really thought of that being a conflict. But it's a good thought.
Get rid of the pay for play rule, and you'd be able to do a lot more with these contracts, these NIL contracts. Because right now, the way it stands, if Joe Blow up the road that owns a car dealership wants to sponsor a child, wants a kid that's coming to West Virginia or whoever, some quarterback, and he wants to give him $100,000, he can't tie it to the university in any way. So therefore, he can't put in there as long as you're the starter for West Virginia University. He can't put in there as long as you remain at West Virginia University. He can't do none of that. But if you get rid of the paper play rule, then these people with these collectives can start making some changes and some ties to make that player stay at a university and play. It would slow down the transfer portal as well quite a bit.
Yeah, because if I can, like Quinn Ewers, make $1.4 million, which was the reported sum at Ohio State, not throw a pass, sit there for a year, and I'm still making my 1.4 at Ohio State. But wow, I got a Texas collective that's willing to pay me another $1 million. I've got the best of both worlds.
And a Lamborghini. Right. I can get a Lamborghini and another $1 million down here. Let me go down here. Yeah. So I think that get rid of the paper play, and a lot of these collectives will be able to put some stuff inside of their contracts with these players to make them stay at universities. Get rid of some of this transfer portal crap. I think it would do a lot to get rid of the paper play rule, period. Now, there's going to be some drawbacks. There's going to be some bad things about paper play. You're going to all of a sudden have people, overbidding on players, of course. But they're already overbidding on players. Am I right? I mean, we're already getting players that are overbid on, So it's not going to make that much of a difference to go ahead and get rid of the rule. Anyway, I just wanted to come in and ask you about that, talk to you about that. Like I said, I was in another show talking about it, so wanted to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think it's a fascinating topic, and I don't know if you've had the same response that I've seen, and it was for years and years and years. A lot of college football fans, not all, but a lot of college football fans were siding with the players, and wow, they're bringing in billions of dollars, and they don't make a dime, and all of that. Well, all of a sudden, it seems like the backlash has been they're making too much money.
Well, yeah, I agree. I know that these universities were making an ungodly amounts of money. So were these conferences. So was television. Yes, I agree 100% with players being paid. I'm fine with that. But like I said, make it NIL. Make it a name, image, and likeness. Tie it to something. If a jersey sells that says Quinn Ewers on it, by all means, Quinn Ewers should get a percentage of that sale. Right? I have no doubt about that whatsoever. I don't think anybody argues with that. But you have to tie it to something. There has to be some kind of an asset there that's being sold or that's being used, whether it's commercial or an item being sold. I had another point too, and I've lost it myself about NIL. My goodness, I'm trying to remember what it was, Mark. It was real important as well. Tying these players to these universities and stuff. And I can't think of it, but I had it on my mind as well, like you
Joey,
did.
we're going to give you a few seconds to think about that, and in the meantime, we might as well just show off our merchandise. We can do that.
Yeah. And coming soon. I've been working on this, Mark, ever since you and I talked about it. We talked about doing merchandise for your team channels, right? So I've been getting those set up as well in the background, and so. It's still a couple of weeks off, but for your team channels, whatever team is a fan, we will have merchandise for them.
I appreciate it, Joey. You're amazing.
I'm gonna turn my camera off, see if I get any better service. I think I'm breaking up, ain't I, Mark?
You are. You were fine there for most of the time. Now you've been breaking up here for the last minute.
Yeah, I apologize. All right, well, I'll jump off here, Mark, and let somebody else come in. I appreciate your time, buddy.
Thanks, Joey. Have a good night. Yeah, we've got some good gear there. And Joey has done a tremendous job, not just for myself, but for a number of YouTubers in setting up our merchandise line. And also keep in mind that we've worked hard to provide value. So we wanted to find a happy medium between quality and price. We wanted to make it stay affordable, but also we want to send you quality merchandise that's going to last a long time. So I've gotten feedback from 7 or 8 people, and they all are very happy with their merchandise. So give it a shot. Check it out. It's at thevoiceofcollegefootball.com. I will leave the link in the chat. Let's get to the article that I wanted to review. It's from Dennis Dodd. So here we go. So let me play graphics and coordinator and producer at the same time as host. So sorry for the delay, but there it is. Big 12 readies to pounce on Four Corners schools as doubt creeps in about Pac-12's viability. So nothing new there, but there are some interesting points that I wanted to review here. And again, the link is in the live chat. If you want to give us a call right here at the Voice of College Football, I will toss it back in the chat. So please join the show. Give me a call. We can talk about this. We can talk about NIL. We can talk about the best matchups coming up for 2023. We can talk about what I was going to make the original topic, and that is what teams are going to be the stock market risers or those that plummet coming up. And appreciate the comment coming in here. That's very nice of you. DHHR. Heh. Mark, you are great with what you do on your channel. I love how you look at all the options and are realistic with everything that's going on in college athletics. Keep up the good work. So let me hit on maybe one point and then we'll take the next call. So basically, you know, this article takes place at the Big 12 basketball tournament where Commissioner Brett Yormark is, of course, attending, and his visibility has been rather high. So let's see. So he makes a comment here that my vision for this conference, meaning the Big 12, is that we are going to live at the intersection of culture and sports, meaning that they're including a lot of entertainment in their events, games, tournaments now. Trying to find some of the key components here. So based on Dennis Dodd's sources, Yormark is having weekly conversations between the Big 12 and those four schools, meaning Arizona, Arizona State, Colorado, and Utah. That's an insider to CBS Sports. Okay, here's the first concrete information that's rather new. Big 12 sources are waiting anxiously to hear the results of a Colorado Board of Regents meeting held to discuss the program's future in the Pac-12. The CU regents met in a special session, according to multiple reports. So there you go. Colorado Board of Regents meeting to discuss the program's future in the Pac-12. This is speculation here that it may only take one of the four schools to bolt for the Big 12 for the other ones to follow. Okay, more on that as we take some calls. The real MVP's on the line.
Hey,
How's it
Mark,
going
how
tonight?
you doing this evening?
I'm good. What's up?
Well, I saw the Big 12 commissioner today. He was at the basketball tournament. You know, a lot of basketball going on since it is March, and he was asked specifically about Gonzaga and bringing them in for a basketball only. And he said he's keeping all options on the table, and he wants it to be a coastal conference that he has.
Ooh, Coastal Conference. Okay, well, that's, of course, could be just Gonzaga, but you would think that he wouldn't want them to be all alone on an island up there.
Yeah, you would think not, but I mean, to me, that is also an indication of maybe the Four Corners schools as well. If you want to try to get them, I think St. Mary's should all be paired with Gonzaga as a basketball only school. I mean, St. Mary's has been really good in basketball for a while. I'm not sure how much you know about St. Mary's, Mark.
I know the name and I know that they've been good in basketball. That's like it.
Oh.
So,
well, they're from the same conference as Gonzaga. And
sure. Yeah, the West Coast Conference, correct?
Right.
Yeah.
That is correct. the WCC.
I do remember something from 10 or 15 years ago. Yeah, that's all up to the Big 12's determination of how much value is brought in by Gonzaga, number one, and then secondly by St. Mary's, which obviously isn't the basketball brand that Gonzaga is, but they've been extremely strong in basketball, and it is good to have another school in that area to just kind of stabilize that. Schools don't want to be the West Virginia of the world that's traveling 800 miles by themselves and there's nobody else in their vicinity. And then on top of that, do either one of St. Mary's or Gonzaga want to play? And this is not that uncommon to play one sport in one league and then have the rest of your sports in another conference.
Well, I feel like they'd probably be more inclined to that because I don't believe either of them have football programs. So I feel like it'd be less of a hassle.
Yeah, I'm not talking about football, but all these other sports could still, you wouldn't necessarily. So who knows what they're thinking? I'm just conjecturing that the Big 12 probably doesn't gain a whole lot, if anything, and it may be more of a pain to drag all their other sports into their conference and have the likes of Gonzaga softball traveling to Lubbock, Texas, and all that traveling when it's not going to either help Gonzaga or St. Mary's or help the Big 12 in any way in any other sport to just make it a basketball only situation.
Well, the Big 12 commissioner seems like there's unrealized potential when it comes to basketball. So maybe he's just going to try to bolster the basketball brand within the Big 12 because there's a good argument that over the last few years, the Big 12 has been the best basketball conference. This year, I'd also say they are the best basketball conference. So maybe they just want that to be their brand as the best basketball conference.
Yeah, and if you can't be the best football conference, that's the way to go. And why not try to maintain a decent football conference, make a ton of money there, but drive your stake into the ground and your flag as the best basketball conference?
Yeah, because I'm not sure if you followed any of the regular season basketball, Mark, but this year, almost every Big 12 game has been a marquee game when it comes to basketball. All of them have basically been ranked on ranked matchups. And I feel like that's got to be good for the conference as a whole in terms of TV ratings.
Yeah, I don't know what the TV ratings are in college basketball. I'm completely detached from that. I have no idea what a decent college basketball game would do in the ratings. I could guess pretty close, I bet, but I don't know how much, as you well know, there's not always a complete connection between the best teams versus the ones that draw the most on TV.
I understand that. And Mark, with them doing well, the Pac-12, we're still on TV deal watch for them. Is it just becoming like the Big East where it feels like an inevitability where they're just going to kind of go away or become a greatly lesser power than they currently are?
Well, those are two different things. Are they going to go away? Like dissolve, implode, cease to exist? Or are they going to just sit there and be a much lesser league, but still exist and be part of the whole deal? That's what I was talking about with David. Let's say the Pac-12 stays the Pac-12 because despite their two losses, they get San Diego State and SMU. And let's say those two schools do nothing for them. They become the Rutgers and Maryland of the Pac-12. And NFL fans are not watching San Diego State and SMU, despite those two markets being substantial. And it's just a really bad football. It's basically a Mountain West. It's basically the Mountain West Conference. But it's given a seat at the table in the college football playoff. I don't know if the Big Ten and the SEC would be okay with that. I don't know if they're fine with that, saying, yeah, we'll beat up on their champion every year. Let them play football. Nobody watches them. They still maintain some level of relevance because they're in the playoff discussion, because they have to be accounted for. I don't know. I guess it's not taking any money away from the Big Ten or the SEC.
Well, as just a general well, it might take away some money because, based on merit, Mark, the SEC and Big Ten might get an extra team in if the Pac-12 or the Big 12 champion didn't get a bid in automatically. So from that aspect, it might be taken away from money. But as a college football fan in general, I don't want to see blowouts in college football games, especially in playoff games. And what I feel like is going to happen is you're going to have the average score of the Pac-12 champion versus either the second or third best, quote unquote, best SEC team be like 35-10 as an average game. And I just don't see that being fun at all to watch.
Yeah, and that's probably being kind by you.
Yeah, it is. I thought I'd be a little bit more charitable today.
And let's face it, Washington and Oregon are by far, I know some Utah fans will take exception, and I know that they're just as good now, right this second. But if we take the entirety of recent history into account, those are the two best football brands and programs. So if the Big 12 takes the four corner schools, there's no way that Oregon and Washington are going to stick around. They're going to press and press and press and press the Big Ten because that's where they want to be. But if they don't get that, they'll just say, well, we're going to the Big 12. There's no way they're going to stick in a Pac-6. Is that what it's going to be at that point? Pac-6.
Yeah, Pac-6. Woohoo.
Yes. There's no way that they're going to stick around for that. And let's add...
What if they add SMU and San Diego State, though? It'd be a Pac-8.
Pac-8. And there's just absolutely no way. Then who do they go after from there? They got to try to bring in two other fledgling programs from the Mountain West, like Colorado State, I heard thrown out there. That's going to do absolutely...
State?
Colorado State. That's going to do absolutely nothing for the Pac, whatever we want to call them, the Pac conference.
Mark, that might be subtraction by addition there.
Yes.
Oh my! I didn't realize their situation was that bad where they're thinking about adding Colorado State, Mark. I mean, that's
I saw that reported.
I mean, I'm sorry, but that is dire straits. Colorado State. Oh my goodness! Have they ever been relevant in college football?
Not really. No.
Like, oh my goodness, that's bad. That's bad.
Yeah, we're gonna see 10 and 12,000 people at a Pac-12 football game. Not that we don't see that on occasion.
Or, Mark, you can watch it on Amazon or Apple TV.
This is going to be fascinating to see the way it turns out, of course, because I'm hearing sources kind of on both ends of the scale in regards to there is going to be no Pac-12 conference. And then on the other hand, that it's going to be able to stabilize and exist and continue on. I don't know what the answer is.
Yes,
I know that it doesn't look good.
Both of us can agree. If they move on, I don't think they're going to be nearly as the shape they have been even the last few years.
Even if they hang on to everybody,
right,
they've taken a huge hit.
Right, they're going to be greatly diminished. Like, I think the average fan will view them as basically a group of five conference.
Yeah, see, I don't want to quite take it to that degree because there's still Utah, there's still Washington, Oregon, and then we'll see if schools like Arizona State, who's been good in the past, and Stanford and Washington State and Oregon State, that's not a group of five conference.
Yeah, but it's a lot of just mediocrity. And I think the average person
mediocrity.
I consider it mediocre.
You consider Utah, Washington, and Oregon to be mediocre football programs.
Okay, Utah might be the most overrated team from last year. Okay, Utah lost to Florida and Penn State. My goodness. And for them to be the propped up darling of the Pac-12.
Well, is there some embarrassment to losing to Penn State?
Not at Penn State particularly, but the way they lost was pretty embarrassing. But I just liked how you skipped over Florida entirely, Mark. You just completely ignored that one.
Well, yeah, the Pac-12 champion should not lose to the 10th best team in the SEC.
Right. And to me, also, I'm saying for the average fan, not for the hardcore fan. Also, the old expression "out of sight, out of mind." That's where I feel like the Pac-12 is going. Is if you can't watch their games, or are going to have to go through all these hoops to watch their games, how many people are even going to remember them as a conference to the average person who only watches the marquee matchups?
DeReal, I'm going to guess that in about 3 or 4 days, you're going to be doing something that I did every year in preparing for the NCAA basketball tournament. And that's you're going to be looking up different teams that you know nothing about. You know the name, you know their nickname, you know that they made the field, but you don't know any players. You really don't know that much about them. But you're going to look them up because you're just I know that I would do that every year. I'd be like, okay. And I was a serious college basketball fan, but I would have to look up these teams in these little conferences. That's what it's going to be for the Pac-12 when we get to college football playoff time. People are going to be like, oh, I haven't seen Oregon State play all year. Let's see who's over there. Oh, they had a running back transfer from South Carolina a couple years ago. Oh, yeah. And they're going to get familiar with Oregon State before the Pac-12 championship game or before the playoff.
Right, that's exactly what I'm talking about, Mark. And I might watch their conference championship game just to scout the teams out. Like, I'm watching teams I've never even heard of. I was watching Northern Arizona versus Montana State to figure out if I should put them as an upset team on the bracket. I mean,
what conference is that?
Southland, I believe, or Big Sky. Big Sky,
yeah.
Northern Arizona had 22 losses and could have made the bracket, by the way, Mark. I'm just saying, if we want to keep expanding, giving automatic berths, I don't want it to go down that road where we have a team with that many losses making potentially the football bracket or having a bad record.
Well, I don't know that they're going to have a bad record. They're going to be playing in a watered-down Pac-12.
Well, right, but if we keep expanding and expanding the playoffs, I'm fearful we're going to water down the product of the playoffs. But that's a fear for later, Mark. Anyway, that's all I got for you tonight. I guess we'll keep on watching the Pac-12. I really like your conference realignments video you're doing, Mark. So
thank you. I enjoy doing that kind of stuff. And if I find some other angles, then we will go with those.
Yeah, hopefully you can, because they're really enjoyable.
If you have any suggestions, I'll certainly take them. So if there's anything I haven't hit on or an angle that I haven't covered, let me know.
Well, I know Golden Blue Dude does all sorts of angles, so you probably can talk to him.
I'm trying to take realistic angles at it. That's no knock on GBD. He's got his own thing going, and he fantasizes. I don't tend to do that. I try to take more of a realistic look at it. That's just his deal, his shtick, and I've got a different deal. So, but and I'm not making any kind of predictions. Mine's more from the standpoint, if this happened, this is the way I would structure the league. These are the 2 or 3 ways that it could be structured, I think, reasonably and scheduled.
Right. Well, if you could do me one last favor, can you put the call-in link in the chat for me?
Yes.
Thank you. See you next time, Mark.
Thanks, DeReal. It's our guy, DeReal MVP. We will post the call-in line here. And again, my original topic for tonight is one that I enjoy, and that's trying to figure out who are going to be the big risers and fallers. Fallers, that's not a word, for this particular college football season. And I define that by who is going to win at least 3 more games than they did last season or lose 3 more games at least than they did last season. Athlon, Street and Smith, magazines like that, I generally have looked at, and I can't find 4 or 5 projections that place teams in those categories. When in fact, I have tracked this over the last 5 or 6 years, and there's typically between 17 and 22 teams that make that kind of jump or decline. And last season, there were 27. Georgia Reload, thank you so much for the contribution. I appreciate that. Georgia seems to have a cakewalk schedule. Yes. Do you think they'll three-peat and have anything like that ever been done before? Well, yes, there have been three-peats in college football, but we would have to go back to the 50s or 60s. The 50s or 60s. Oklahoma, Bud Wilkinson, possibly. I don't believe that Bear Bryant, no, he never had 3 consecutive national championships. Notre Dame probably did in the 40s. Again, somebody check me on that. I don't have it in front of me, but that is a great point, that Georgia will have no non-conference losses, and then they will play a schedule that includes, I believe, Auburn, and I'm trying to think who their other non-division game is. Last year it was Mississippi State. I believe they play Ole Miss. They're going to be a substantial favorite in both of those games. Tennessee's a challenge, and really it's Tennessee in the SEC championship game as teams that are likely to challenge them. But it's college football. They had to deal with Missouri last year. Keep that in mind. There are always those kind of games that pop up every year. But they're going to be able to lose possibly 2 games. That's never happened before, again, in this playoff format. But 1 game and still make the playoff. All right. We will keep it moving here at the Voice of College Football. We got Chris on the line. Chris, what's going on?
Hey, Mark.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
I am doing just fine.
Faller actually is a word. It's a person that falls trees.
Really?
Yep.
Faller.
Yep. I'm looking at it as I'm talking to you. It's it's not what you want it to be, but it's a word.
It just didn't sound right coming out of my mouth.
Well, no, it doesn't mean what you want it to mean, but it is.
Yeah.
It is a word.
Yeah.
It's like a lumberjack.
Okay. So I was not using it correctly. Yes. And I realized that. I just didn't have, riser is a word, but again, I don't know that was not even used correctly, because anyway, we digress.
Do you mind if I ask you a couple questions?
No, that's why I'm here.
Oh, okay. And I don't like being critical of people. He was saying something about, it's a school I actually attended, but that's really relevant. Colorado State, whether they were any good, I guess, is kind of the context, I think. I did a comprehensive summary of every team, actually, and they aren't half bad, actually. I mean, it's all in how you want to look at it, I suppose. I mean, they're not obviously not one of the better programs, but I have them 10th in the Mountain West as far as percentages. And I think I have them at, let me see, hold on just a second. I think I have them at, I have them at about almost 35 cumulative, almost 35% winning percentage. A little bit shy of that, actually. That's based on a scale that runs from almost to 80%, I think. For Ohio State, I think is, well, actually, Ohio State's almost 83%. So you can see there's like a 50% difference between the two. But
Colorado State has only won 35% of its games. That can't be right.
Well, no, it's I've already told you what I do. I take what their winning percentage and then I translate it into like a cumulative percentage as far as that would be what they would probably win against quality programs.
Gotcha.
It's not 35%. It's about 30. It's only about 34.6, I guess. And we got Ohio State up there around 83 almost. Let me check again. It's minus 0.0. There's about.
We don't have to figure it out down to the decimal, Chris. We get your point. Ohio State has the best winning percentage, and Colorado State's is poor. Gotcha.
Well, no, there's a fairly sizable difference between the two. Obviously, I don't know if that's what he was trying to tell you, but I mean, I think you can say there's like almost a 2 to 1. Relatively speaking, I suppose maybe between the two. So I mean, yeah, that's why I think Colorado State. That's probably why they're in the G5 category. But I don't like him really dumping on them. I don't really appreciate that, but that's okay, I guess.
Well, he wasn't dumping on them. He just made a comment that when is the last time that Colorado State was very good? And that all depends on your perspective to a certain extent versus their competition. I'm looking at their year-by-year records, and you'd have to go back to about 20 years ago was the last time that they strung together successful seasons. So in 2003, they were 7-6. The year before, 10-4, 7-5, 10-2, 8-4, 8-4, 11-2, 7-5, 8-4, 10-2. You know, there was a nice run there for about 10 years in the 90s.
Well, that was, I think, I went there in 93 or something like that. And that was the first year they had Sonny Lubick. And I honestly don't remember what their record was that season, but that was one of the first time. I mean, that was the first year they had Lubick, and I don't know that they got better, I think, after I left, but they were still pretty decent though, because they had I think it was, who was the coach there that they had from Ohio State? Anyway, yeah, he had been there he'd built the program is what I'm trying to get at. Yep. And so when Sonny Lubick came to Colorado State, it wasn't like he walked into he had there was a program that he could build upon, and I think they just got better is what I think happened. But I didn't really follow them all that closely, but I don't know. I'm not trying to put them in any position. They just were, like I said, I gave you the percentage. I think that they were, that's, over the course of their history, which is, I think that's pretty fair. But obviously, if you want to set the bar as high as Ohio State or whoever, then they're not going to meet any come anywhere close to it. But 2-1, like I said, that's why they're in the G5 would be why, that's generally the separation between the two is 2-1. I don't know if you knew that or not, but.
Is this the reason you called, Chris?
Well, no, but I thought you might want to know. I mean, this is what I called, okay? There was something else I wanted to tell you. I did what I thought was a pretty good, what I did is my own, I guess what we call it, my own assessment of where I think teams ought to be. I don't know how it's going to fit within yours, but here's one of them. I put the Mid-American and Conference USA together along with New Mexico State and Massachusetts because they didn't have enough to fill it. And what that is a 24 team bracket or whatever. And, they have a better percentage actually than Colorado. If we're saying Colorado State sucks, I mean, then that's one thing, but their cumulative record is better than Colorado State. So it wouldn't matter what you think of Colorado State. If you put Mid-American and Conference USA together, they rank higher than Colorado State is what I'm getting at. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And then that's the worst one. So the worst one actually is pretty decent. The second worst one I put together was the Big 8 and Sun Belt. Oh, and the Big 8 was the old Big 8. So I don't know if that helps. Nebraska, Oklahoma, Missouri, Colorado, Iowa State, Kansas State.
Why would you be combining the Big 8 and the Sun Belt Conference?
I don't know. I don't know for sure, but I guess I got up to 24 maybe or something. I don't really know for sure, but anyway, they were almost at 40%. So that the putting those two together doesn't quite get you to 40%. Independently, the Mountain West is right at 40%. And if you put them together with the Pacific 10, which is what I did, they're just under 50%, which I think, so if you put those two together, which is like you have the 10 and 14, so that gets you to 24, right? And that, like I said, that's over the course of history, obviously. It's not like present situation, but, and in the Mountain West, I also included Brigham Young and Colorado. So I try to put as many, or not Colorado, I'm sorry, Utah. Brigham Young and Utah. And what I got, that's why it's as high as it is, I guess. You have those two in there, but.
So I'm lost right now, and I'm guessing everybody else that's listening and watching is lost. My question for you, Chris, is what are you trying to accomplish?
Well, no, I think it's kind of interesting to talk about because, like I said, the worst one, the worst grouping that I could come up with, and it is still pretty decent, is kind of what I'm getting at. I don't know if that makes sense or not, but you said Colorado State sucks. Well, if they suck, well, you didn't?
I just don't know what we're doing here, Chris. You put together, I don't even know what to call them, proficiency ratings or something.
No.
Over a period of time, you've evaluated these programs over what period of time? History?
Yeah, history. Their entire
history. Okay.
And I don't know what you would think you would get if you put the Mid-American and Conference USA together. Those are like 9 and 10.
Okay.
So okay. And we still get a pretty decent composite. You get a better result than if you just had the League of Colorado States. That's my whole point. If every team was Colorado State, well, actually, that's not completely true. I think actually it's not as good as Colorado State because I forgot I have to like make a, so they're not quite as good as Colorado State would be. But
one possible flaw in this, correct me if I'm wrong, is that you were taking historical results. So you're going back to the beginning of time and taking everybody's win-loss records, and then you're putting them through some kind of calisthenics, and then you're producing results that you want to apply now.
Yeah. Well, I don't know how else to do it. I mean, we have to limit it to 1 year. I'm just taking their entire history, and I think that's the best way to go about it personally. Then we don't have to talk about whether Colorado State was any good. I just take their entire history, and then you can tell me if it's any good or not. And
I will here in a second if you can answer me one question. Where does Colorado State rank? And I'm assuming that your information is valid. Where does Colorado State rank?
Have I ever given you about
30?
You're being somewhat critical of me, but 96th of 131. 96 of 131.
Well, I'm not necessarily being. There's a difference between questioning and criticizing. I'm questioning because I don't know what your method is. So why I'm not going to. You haven't sold me on your method. I don't know what your method is. So I'm just.
There's a 2-to-1 separation between the G5. So basically, what I'm doing is. I'm taking the percentage against the G5, and I think I'm dividing that by, if I'm not mistaken, I think I divide that by 3, and then I add it to what their percentage is against the P5. I think I add the two together, and what you get is like a composite, as if every game was in a P5. It's sort of what it does. So I mean, but anyway, if I do that, and assuming I do it right, which is probably not wrong to say maybe I didn't, but I think I did the best I could to not try to make it wrong. But they're a top 100 team. So, I mean, I don't know if you think a top 100 is good or not, but
no.
Well, that's where they are, is they're in the top 100 of 131.
Okay.
And they're
do you generally believe that a team or a unit, a individual who ranks 99th out of 130 is typically good at what they do?
96.
96 out of 130.
I'm actually letting you make that decision. I'm not.
Okay.
I'm
saying it's not good.
Utah State's 102nd.
Okay, that's not good. But again, Utah State's a different program today than when they started.
Well, here's a couple things to think about. Utah's 51st. Brigham Young 55th.
Okay.
Well, San Diego State's 82nd. Hawaii's 90th.
Yes, San Diego State. I guarantee that they are not 82nd over the last 20 years.
Well, no, I think I did it right, but it's not over 20 years.
I know you did it for all time.
Yeah.
So again, what's the conclusion to all this? The conclusion is what? Who is the best football program in history?
Oh, I think it's Ohio State.
Okay. Who has the best conference in history?
Southeast Conference.
Okay.
Right. I have all the numbers, but anyway, I think I mailed them to you too. Anyway, I just thought it's just food for thought. You asked me what the point of it is. So I put the Southeast, Southwest, and 4 teams in the ACC because I figured you have to get to 24. I figured they all want to go to 24. So I put the Southeast, Southwest. You know who those are, I imagine. And then I put Miami, Florida, Clemson, Florida State, and Georgia Tech. I didn't know who to put in there. I gave them the 4 best teams. I thought they tried to give them the 4 best, all right? And anyway, they almost get up to they're almost at 65%, so that's pretty good. And then what I did is I put the Big 10, Pac-10, and the Big 8, I think. Anyway, that one's at 63%. Oh, and then I put the ACC, the Big East, and the American. I guess if you put all 3 of those together, I guess you get to 24. That one's at 53.5. And then, like I said, I put the Pacific 10 and Mountain West, and that one's just under 50.
You got to understand, Chris, that without some type of a graphic presentation, people are lost.
I don't know that they have to be lost. I mean, you can think about 50 would be like a middle.
No, I'm not saying that they're not trying to keep up, but there's no way I can't keep up with what you're saying. So.
Well, if you have any questions, just ask me. But anyway, would you want to know a specific conference, what the teams? I'll give you the SEC since Drill MVP so focused on that stupid conference. I'm going to give it to you, and it's not that I don't like them. But, he seems to think that they're the best conference ever, which I guess in a way they kind of are.
Well, it's the best conference now.
No, they're the best conference ever.
Okay. That I don't know for sure, but I know it's the best conference now.
In history.
So the last thing you're going to give us here, Chris, is you're going to tell us how all the teams in the SEC rank all time.
Utah almost beat Florida, by the way, and he made it sound like, oh, what a tragedy that Utah lost to Florida. I mean, they almost beat Florida. Anyway, all right, I have Alabama at number 2, Tennessee at number 7, Louisiana State at number 9, Georgia at number 10, Auburn at 12, Florida at 14. Then there's a pretty big drop. It goes to 29 for Mississippi, 36 to South Carolina, 39 for Mississippi State, 44th, tied for 44th, Kentucky, and then tied for 54th, Vanderbilt.
Okay. That sounds pretty reasonable.
Well, I'm not trying to be reasonable. That's just that's where they are. I mean, it's like.
Yeah, I understand that. I'm just saying that seems to be rather
on
point.
So you might want to, you're from Big Ten. Ohio State, number 1, Michigan, 11, which is, I think, fair. People don't like that, but I think it's fair. 20, Wisconsin, 22, Minnesota, 23, Michigan State, 27th, tied for 27th, Iowa, tied for 38th, Purdue, 46th, Illinois, 58th, Indiana, and 67th, Northwestern.
Okay.
And, I've already, this was something actually, I haven't updated it actually. I did it through last season. And so I haven't taken the time yet to go through, including this season, but I got to figure over the course of history that one season's not probably going to change everything all that much. But no. I have to be honest, I haven't done it through this last season. It's through, so I didn't include 2022. But, it should be close enough to, because it takes time to do each one. It's not like I can just throw it all.
All right, Chris. Well, we appreciate you being here.
Thanks, Mark.
Thanks so much for the call. Bye-bye.
Bye.
I saw the total of viewers drop from like 122 to 105 during that phone call. So I appreciate what Chris does with that. It just can't be conveyed. And first of all, he starts in on these conversations and kind of starts in the middle. So it's kind of difficult to follow from there. All right, let's keep it moving here at the Voice of College Football. We got Lawrence on the line. Hello.
Hey, Mark.
What's going on?
Hey, not too much. How are you doing?
I'm good. What have you been up to?
Man, nothing. Just watching all the conference realignment news. And I'll give you one team. You say you got the ups and downs.
Yeah.
I'm going Colorado. I think they're going to be bowl eligible this year.
Okay.
So that's at least this 5-game increase.
All right. I'll give you my list here. I'll throw it up on the screen here.
Yeah, please do.
Colorado go from 1-11 to what is your estimation right now?
6-6. They'll be bowl eligible.
Okay. Yeah, that's fair. Let's see here. All right. So what do we got here? Okay. These are not any kind of final predictions or anything, but so, we've got Cincinnati at 9-3 last year. So I got a group of teams, and then the M means that they would go minus in wins from last season. So Cincinnati last season was 9-3, and pretty much a lot of the teams that are moving into the Big 12 are obviously going to face a tougher schedule.
Absolutely.
So Cincinnati at 9-3, can we see them going 6-6 this year, or UCF going from 9-3 to 6-6?
Given the fact that I think Cincinnati and UCF, will they play each other this year on the schedule?
I don't know.
I think, yeah. I will probably give Cincinnati 5-7. I don't think they're going to be bowl eligible this year.
Okay.
I think the same thing about UCF. Because like you said, the Big 10 or Big 12, excuse me, it's just going to hit different for those teams, playing that schedule every week. And still, when you got Oklahoma and Texas still hanging around for a year. So those first 3 teams, Cincinnati, UCF, and Houston, they're gonna be minus. I don't think either 3 of those are gonna be bowl eligible. Duke, yeah, they'll take a step back. I really agree with your list. I'm looking at the list here, and I don't see anybody really winning more or even maintain the level that they're at right now. Maybe with the exception of USC.
Yeah. No, I agree. I'm not picking USC to go 8-4. I'm just
Right, of course
saying
not.
they do have a run of games where they play Notre Dame, Utah, Oregon, Washington, UCLA in a row.
That's pretty tough. It's pretty tough. I mean, it should be UCLA. Utah's gonna be tough. Notre Dame's gonna be well. I mean, sitting looking at Notre Dame hindsight being 2020. I mean, I would probably take USC to beat Notre Dame this year. It doesn't look like Notre Dame's really making any gigantic moves and none of recruiting well, but I think I'm still not sold on Marcus Freeman.
They did pick up one of the best quarterbacks in the country.
Well, a transfer portal. They got him out the transfer portal.
Yes, Sam Hartman. Wake
Yeah,
Forest.
okay.
But yes, consecutive weeks for USC at Notre Dame, Utah, at Cal, Washington, at Oregon, UCLA. So 5 out of 6 difficult games.
Yeah, I'm a Lincoln Riley fan. I think he should go out of those 6 games. He should probably go 4-2. That'd be my best. Yeah, that'd be my best guess on that one.
At least, yeah.
I wanted to know also, had you seen this Ross Dellinger, the guy from Sports Illustrated? Have you seen that podcast he did on the Pony Express?
No.
I think he broke some news that people really didn't pick up on. He said he has a source that's a high-ranking Pac-12 official.
Yeah.
And this official said that if the deal that's presented is over 50% streaming, that's not the preference of what they want to go with.
Okay, I heard something to that extreme. There are a lot of people that analyze these things and that are media consultant types that say if that contract is more than 50% streaming, that it's not a good deal, regardless of what the money is.
Right. So apparently this Pac-12 official told Ross that exact same thing. So I think that's pretty factual. I'm going to have a big problem if they can't find a linear TV partner that's going to take over 50% of their content. Because right now we're talking about one game a week on ESPN and one game a week on Amazon.
Yeah.
I mean, that leaves, if you just went with the 10 we got and you took those 2 games, it's 4 teams. So now you only got 3 other games that won't get any visibility. And I think, depending upon the matchups for the week, I mean, if it's not Oregon, Washington, or Washington, Utah, or Utah, Oregon, as we're constructed now, that's going to be a problem for those 3 teams because they might be on TV, on ESPN, or even on the Amazon top game. What we're talking about once every 3 to 4 weeks.
Yeah, so I'm not disagreeing with you, but if we had a chart in front of us that showed us the amount of time that people watch various shows and sporting events, not so much sporting events, although that's starting, but more TV shows. And we saw that on a graph and how much they watch streaming, how much they stream to watch what they watch versus watching on traditional TV, we would see a straight line up. Like it just increases exponentially every year. So it is headed in the right direction.
Does that include live sports too, or is that just all types of programming?
No, that's just regular programming. Although, of course, the NFL made a move this past season to go Amazon, and we're going to see more and more head that way.
Yeah,
so
I mean, I agree
that way, but I just don't know if the Pac-12 has enough pull to drive the NFL. The difference between the NFL and the Pac-12 is, a stratosphere in terms of being able to pull people. And I love watching the NFL. I will watch an NFL game at any point, any time. And I didn't even it didn't cross my mind every Thursday that there was an NFL game on Amazon. Like I totally forgot. So I didn't even try to check it out.
Yeah, I saw a few of them. Pretty good. But I'm just thinking about the strategy behind that too. Even with Amazon, if they wanted the top game and wanted to put it on Friday night, I mean, how much is that going to pull? Because, you know, a lot of people are going to be with families and things like that. I mean, you would have to be really diehard Pac-12 to be looking for them Friday night on Amazon.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
especially
if I'm the Pac-12, and I'm just speaking off the top of my head, it's not like, you know, I'm paid to do their negotiations for them and have a bunch of research in my hands, but I would try to get on television on Thursday, Friday, and late night Saturday. I would tell ESPN, you show a bunch of American Conference type games typically on Thursday and Friday night. We will give you a Pac-12 game on Thursday and Friday night. I would be spreading out my schedule to find every opportunity that I could if I was the Pac-12.
I agree. I would even consider Wednesday night.
Yeah, I would consider it. Yeah.
Maybe even Tuesday night. I mean, I would try to pick out the gaps where no football programming on, or even to your point, if I did Thursday, I would probably go 6:30. You know, get an early game.
So I'm on record as saying that a number of times, exactly what you said. I would play as early as possible because I would hope that even if people were leaving my game to watch the NFL, at least they watched 3/4 of it. And the hope would be if you put on a decent game and it was a close game, that a lot of people, even though they prefer the NFL, if they're watching a 41-37 game in the fourth quarter, that they'd be like, you know what? You know, I want to see how this turns out, and I don't mind, you know, catching the NFL game, you know, 5 minutes deep into the first quarter. That's not like a big deal. Or they've got two screens, so they pull them both up.
I totally agree with you. I mean, at this point, I mean, I know a lot of people kind of laughed at Ion TV. I was one of those people too, but looking at the situation that the Pac-12 is in, I mean, I definitely think you need a linear TV partner. So, I mean, in Ohio, we get Ion TV on Channel 7 here with Spectrum. I mean, I would check out a Pac-12 game on Ion if I had nothing else to watch. I mean, if you did the off schedule too, I mean, I don't know how much money that would be worth, but the visibility, you definitely still have some level of that.
Yeah, you have a certain amount of people that are going to watch a football game at any time. So you're right. You could play Tuesday night. You could play Wednesday night.
I mean, I think those are the best options for him at this point, because the longer this drags out, I think the worse it gets. And that's when you start getting the other members in the conference getting cold feet about staying in, and they start looking at other options to get out.
Well, absolutely. Exactly. You just, yeah. Exactly what you stated. You allow the schools to do nothing but continue to have conversations with the Big 12, number one. Number two, they put themselves in a place of they've put themselves in a place of weakness in negotiations, and that's not a good place to be. When you're desperate and you don't have any leverage, that's a bad place to be. And they put themselves in this place by not... based on reports that I've seen, they could have gotten a Big 12 type of contract last fall. If they would have just put pen to paper last fall, they could have, but they felt that they could do better if they waited. Well, ESPN and Fox filled up all their TV spots, and there's no TV spots except for late night.
And that's a big problem. You know, I think that, I mean, of course, USC and UCLA leaving. I mean, I read reports that it costed them 30% of their media rights, almost $200 million, the last they're going to get on this new deal. It just, they slow played it, and it was a big mistake. They should have been trying to figure this out, like you said, last fall, for something that they could present to the media partners. And now, I mean, it just seems as if San Diego State and SMU are now in a holding pattern. They're trying to negotiate a deal.
Oh, sure.
You know, with these two teams, and like these two teams bring no other media value. So now they're trying to get a deal done and maybe bring these teams in. I'm not sure what the strategy is at this point.
Sure. I posted a video the other day, and I basically said, here are all the dominoes that are out there. There's about 8 of them, but the one that's sitting there that should start to move the other ones is this Pac-12 deal. The Pac-12 media contract is going to be the one that's most likely, not for sure, but most likely going to start to move the other ones. Then once the Pac-12 comes back with a deal, then Arizona, Arizona State, Utah, and Colorado can determine, okay, is that good enough or not? And then also, obviously, as you just mentioned, and it makes total sense, and I said the same thing, San Diego State and SMU, of course, they would like to leave a group of 5 to go to a Pac-12, like a current Pac-12 or the Pac-12 of yesteryear, but they're not going to go until there's a deal struck, a media deal, because they don't want to be left out in limbo and be joining a conference that's dissolving and be left out in the middle of nowhere.
Right. Don't you think this hurts recruiting too? I mean, if you're a junior in high school and you're seeing this mess going on, or you're, talking to coaches and that sort of stuff, and they don't have a media deal done, and half the stuff is going to probably end up on streaming, won't that impact recruiting in some fashion?
I think so, to a certain extent. These guys are much more educated than we were years ago, and obviously they've got the internet and everything's open for them to find out about anything. So again, that's all about leverage. The higher recruit you are, the more options you have, versus there are still going to be 3 stars that really want to play at Washington State, and that's their best option because their other offers came from Utah State and New Mexico State. So they're going to go to Washington State because that's still, regardless of what happens with this, their best option.
Right. I mean, if we just took those other 2 schools that you took by example, I mean, you think about it at this stage, it's the same type of visibility that you would get if they go 50% or more streaming. So then it becomes more regional. Like you get a kid in Utah who got an offer at Utah State, or you can go to Washington State. I mean, at that point in time, why don't you just stay at Utah State? I mean, what's the point of going to Washington State at that point in time?
Shoot, at this point, if you look at the Mountain West and where those games are played on TV, they always have a late night ESPN2 game, almost always. Then they have a ton of games on CBS Sportsnet, which I've always gotten. I don't know what their saturation is nationally, but I'm guessing it's fairly high, CBS Sportsnet, but they show a ton of Mountain West games.
I get it in Ohio. We get CBS Sports Network.
Yeah.
It's funny, we get that, but we don't get the Pac-12 network on my cable package. Like you can't even order it.
Yeah, I do have the Pac-12.
Yeah, see, I don't. I for some reason or not, it's not included in the package. I mean, I get ACC Network, I get SEC Network, I get Big Ten Network, I get CBS Sports. But I don't get Pac-12.
Spectrum?
Yeah, I'm on Spectrum.
I'm on Spectrum. I
Really?
got the Pac-12. Yeah.
Yeah, for some reason, I've looked for it too. I've actually gone to look for it. Maybe I need to upgrade my package.
But I've never had the Pac-12 before. This is the first time I've ever seen it. And I got to say, I watched Pac-12 Football Media Days, and I thought it's a shame that nobody watches this network because they did a pretty good job.
Yeah, don't they have issues with, like, they don't have a production team? Like, they can't go to a stadium and, like, do their own games? I think that would solve a lot of problems, too.
How are they doing games?
Well, my understanding is they're just feeding it in from whoever's broadcasting.
Okay.
It's not Pac-12 actually producing the game. It's another camera crew and people who are there who are doing the game, and then the Pac-12 feeds it in.
Well, that seems to be lower quality, certainly. But even at this point, ESPN has a ton of freelance crews out there. And actually, for the SEC and the ACC network games, not football, they're still doing that full throttle and their major college basketball games. But all these soccer games and softball games and everything else, they have students doing those games, doing the productions on those games. I was at ESPN for a long time. I just left there 2.5 years ago, and 2.5 years ago, and we hired tons of production staff, and we hired tons of producers, 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 and we kids just out of college who had great experience running, games on the SEC, directing the games, producing the games, doing all the technical support on campus for soccer games, softball games, all of that.
Very good. I mean, Pac-12 might need to pick up on that. I guess my last thing will be, because I don't want to take up too much of your time, but I think, in summary, I think the Pac-12 is not going to look the same in the next 2 to 3 years. I think it's going to be a depleted conference. There'll be G5 status. I mean, think about it like this. Colorado hired a coach in Deion Sanders who they openly admitted they can't pay. And so Deion isn't there to be streamed half the time. He's there to be on TV. He's prime time. So I think Colorado's going to be the first school to jump.
Well, as we read in an article a few minutes ago, their Board of Regents are meeting very soon. So they're obviously thinking about it, discussing it.
Yeah, well, they met yesterday, correct? Yesterday morning, and they didn't have any business or anything like that came out of it?
I don't know.
Okay, I saw somebody link from the Colorado's website. Their Board of Regents meeting was yesterday at 9 a.m., and they went into executive session to discuss their media partnership with Pac-12. And of course, as an executive, we don't have any details.
Sure.
But I've also read that the executive committee on the Pac-12, the chancellors who was on there, who I guess there's 3 of them, they're going to meet again in 2 weeks to discuss what the progress is. And I just, my intuition is just telling me it's not looking good. This is a bad situation for the Pac-12. The longer this drags on, the worse it's going to get, the more lowball offers are going to get. And at some point in time, I mean, I think schools like Arizona and Colorado, and even though Utah doesn't want to go, I think you don't want to be the last person on the ship when it goes down trying to find a life raft, because they're going to be all taken at that point in time.
Well, absolutely. We also, though, need to take into consideration that these television contracts are a certain amount of money, and they are certainly significant, but there are other financial aspects in all of this that need to be taken into consideration by these schools in terms of who they're aligning with academically and how much money is involved there.
Oh, no question about it. I don't disagree with that at all. Academics is what's driving all the universities at the end of the day. AAU status, they don't necessarily lose that if they join the Big 12. Would they? I think Colorado and Utah, they're AAU schools, I believe. I don't think they'll lose that status if they join the Big 12, would they?
Well, since that's a research related status, I wouldn't think. I don't think that would change their. I don't know. I can't speak for sure, so I'm just spitballing that.
Okay, yeah, I just thought it'd be a good question, because I mean, if this is academically aligned and we're talking about athletic conferences, I mean, I get the part that you want to be academically aligned with like-minded schools, and there's no greater schools in the country than Stanford and Cal.
Absolutely.
At the same time, though, it's like, would that relationship really be broken if you went to the Big 12 and left the Pac-12, and you all still shared AAU status, like just as that prestige level?
Yeah, I don't know what the connection is between AAU schools. I don't know if that's just. I don't know if there's a connection.
Well, my understanding, I read up on the website a little bit, and I saw the list of schools, and it just seems like they do specific research, and they partner all the time with each other in terms of like taking on research. But in that regard, I don't know if the athletic conferences really deal into that either. I mean, I know I went to Michigan State as an AAU school, but now Nebraska is no longer AAU, although they were when they came in. I'm not sure if they lost the status because they joined the conference or there were some other requirements they had to go through, because I think AAU, they do their own metrics in terms of determining whether the school's worthy of that type of status. I'm just not sure if athletic affiliation with conferences is one of the metrics.
Hey, Lawrence. Well, we appreciate you being here.
All right, have a good evening.
We're going to take these other calls. Thank you so much. We will keep it moving here at the Voice of College Football. But then again, I had collected these schools that you see right there, Cincinnati on down, as possibilities, because there were 27 of these last year, as being teams that would win three or less games, if you follow me right there. So Cincinnati 9-3, dropping to a 6-6 at least. UCF at 9-3, they would have to drop to a 6-6. So those are candidates for losing three or more games than they did last season. And then the next batch would be this list of teams. I came up with many more that could possibly add to their win totals by at least 3 from last season. All right, moving on to the next call. We got Nick on the line. Nick, what's going on tonight?
Hey, Mark, how you going?
I'm good. How you doing?
Doing pretty good. You've talked a lot about playoff expansion in the past, and I wanted to get your opinion on this. Where do you think? Let me ask you this: do you think the NCAA has announced playoff expansion? Is it going to correct me if I'm wrong? It's 12 teams, or is it
18?
Yes,
in 2024.
Okay, so 2024, 12 teams.
Yes.
So is that a better system, in your opinion, than the BCS?
Well, I had less issue with the actual BCS and more issue with it being eliminated or limited to 2 teams. That was my issue with the BCS system.
Okay, but the BCS system was essentially trying to identify the 2 best teams or the 2 most deserving teams in the country.
Yes.
And having them play for the title.
Yes. So it wasn't necessarily the formula itself, because the BCS was a formula for every team in the country. So 8 teams could have been selected and put into a playoff. It was just that only 2 were selected. That was my major issue with the BCS.
So in your ideal world, you would go with an 8-team playoff?
Yes, I would. And include
Okay.
all the conference champions.
Well, yeah, you've explained that multiple times over, so I won't make you go through that diatribe again. But yeah, I guess I just wanted to kind of get your opinion. Like, okay, in my mind, if you're gonna expand the college football playoff to 12 teams, why not expand it to 16? Or just keep? I feel like we're going down this road where it's like there's always going to be an argument to expand it further. And if you can't make a justifiable case for more teams than just 1 and 2 or the BCS model, then what's the point? The turn is just going to turn into a massive tournament, which likely won't happen because it's football. It's not basketball. Yeah. But do you kind of get what I'm saying? Like,
sure. And anytime somebody brings up that argument point to me, I'm not speaking for the playoff committee or the folks that decided playoff expansion. I'm speaking for myself. For me, the difference in going from 4 to at least 5 and beyond is that you include all the conferences. So that's the one difference in this expansion, is that now we have finally gotten to a point where there is complete inclusion for each conference.
Yeah, and that makes sense. But I'm just saying, like, from expanding, but you're saying that from the 8-team model, right?
No, I'm saying from where we currently stand with 4.
Yeah.
That this is the first time we have gotten to a point where we are now guaranteeing that each conference is represented. And that's why I support, even though I don't like this model for a number of reasons, I do support it from that standpoint.
So you're just essentially saying, like, I'm happy that it's not just 4 conferences, it's 5 conferences included within the 12.
Well, it's not even most years 4 conferences. This year
But
it
yeah,
was
you
3
get what I'm saying,
conferences.
though.
Yeah, 4
Like
teams.
the possibility of each conference representative, like all of that stuff. But like, I don't understand like, to me, do you think they're maybe you've spoken on this before? You can refer me to a video and I'll shut up and hang up. But what is this 12 team? It almost seems like media pressure. Like,
Oh,
what is
it
this?
is.
What is this 12 team model? I don't know what it's going to actually, like, when you look at it, at the landscape of the sport where it's at right now. How is a 12 team playoff going to provide a solution to the sport?
Well, it all depends on what you want to achieve. I want to achieve a situation in which a certain number of qualified teams representing all the conferences play in a tournament to determine the champion. That's what I want to achieve. I don't have any money interests involved. The networks do, and they have a big say in this.
So do you think they're just trying to eliminate, like, it's like a month until the college football playoff? We need to have like a bit, like, money interest wise, we need to have games every weekend in football season. So even if that includes buys for the top seeds, that's fine. They're going to be playing. They're only going to have, it's just another bye week. So, like, is that the financial driver? Because what you just said would still be accomplished in an 8-team playoff.
Well, here's what expansion, whether it's to 8 or 12 or 16, accomplishes. There are more playoff games, and those playoff games are going to be more highly visible and watched than 99 point fill in the number % of the games during the regular season that aren't named Ohio State, Michigan, etc. There's only about 5 of them. So more people are going to watch these games. So therefore they bring in more revenue. We already have a deterioration of the bowl system. So people are less interested in watching these bowl games, and these games, these playoff games, are going to take the place of many of those bowl games.
Okay, so yeah, like, let's say this last year or whatever year, the Fiesta Bowl and the Orange Bowl, because they're the only games that can include the potential national champion. Those are the only games that matter, which goes back to ratings. So they're just expanding it to 12 teams to make the 6 major bowls relevant again.
Well, what they are going to tell you, if you asked the powers that be why they're expanding the playoff, it's to create inclusion, represent all the conferences, create better entertainment for the college football fans. But what they're doing is creating more high-end commodities, more high-end product that can be sold at higher rates to create much more money. And also,
so they're money hungry. That's why it's the 12 teams.
Absolutely. And the other portion of that is not only do they increase the value of games being played in December rather than watching the Liberty Bowl and the Blue Bonnet Bowl, to grab a bowl name from 40 years ago, you're watching college football playoff games. So
wait, can you repeat that real quick? From 40 years ago, which bowl was
the
that?
Blue Bonnet Bowl.
That was real?
Yes, played at the Houston Astrodome.
That's awesome.
Yes, I loved the Blue Bonnet Bowl. It probably existed for a good 10 or 12 years.
That might be a side Mark Rogers college football channel name. You need to bring that back.
Bring it back. The Blue Bonnet Bowl. Absolutely.
There we go.
If we could do enough crowdfunding here, we would buy a bowl game. We would call it the Voice of College Football Bowl. And it would be one of these bowl games that people don't want to watch. But with all said about, and I'm playing along with people not wanting to watch bowl games, the bowl games they're made fun of because the stadiums are half empty at least, and they have funny names, and they have mediocre teams playing in them, but people watch them.
Well, and that's the hilarious reason why a lot of the people who are against college football playoff expansion, they're like, oh my gosh, the semifinals have been blowouts, like constantly blowouts. We're only going to get more blowouts. But then those same people were lauding this last year of college football playoff semifinals, which was like, I mean, college football addicts heroin, essentially, just insane games. And then those same people turned around and complained that Georgia won 65-7 against TCU in the college football. And they're saying that that's like a reason to not expand. And I'm like, I don't know about that. I think if you expand, you might not get the two best teams, but you're going to get some incredible games.
We're going to get incredible games, but we're also going to expand the possibility, and it's certainly going to be fulfilled, of having some awful games. We're going to have both.
Yeah, we're gonna have some blowouts, but we're gonna have some really, you're expanding the possibility of having really fun matchups.
Yes.
And those matchups are still in contention for a national title. And that's what people are missing, because if you're complaining about the current system we have, the current college football system, like the 4-team thing, if you're complaining about that and expansion, then you should be the first person out the door going back to the BCS model. Like, you should be that first, you know what I mean? That first person who is just, we need the 1 and 2 teams. Because if you look back in the last 4 teams, should have been Michigan, Georgia.
Yes.
Playing. But you look at Georgia versus Ohio State, who got destroyed. Well, not destroyed, but Michigan ran away with it.
Sure.
In the end against Ohio State. No one predicted that. And both those teams were undefeated. And then you look at the TCU-Michigan game, what transpired. Looked like TCU was going to blow out Michigan, then Michigan comes back. We all know this story. But then you look at Ohio State versus Georgia, comes down to a field goal. Georgia wins, based off luck, essentially. And they blow out TCU. So Ohio State could have been a national champion. We don't know what Michigan would have done against Georgia. So you're only expanding those possibilities. Anyway, I'm going on a rant. I don't want to take up any more of your time, but
Nick, that's okay, Nick. I enjoy these kind of conversations, even if they kind of run off the rails a little bit. But I'm in the process of going through, as I enjoy doing. I've got a notebook right here. I'm all the way back to 2008. I'm going to take apart every season from 2013, the one prior to the playoff, and go backwards and pick apart each national championship season to determine, for example, 2008, Florida and Oklahoma played in the national championship game. They both had 1 loss, and that's fine. They were the 2 teams that the BCS determined. However, we had 5 other teams with 1 loss. And this is the issue I have. And this is the reason why, when it was expanded from 2 to 4 and people asked me, was that a good move? Is this a good thing for college football? My answer was, this is not a good system, but yes, this is a step in the right direction for no other reason than it affords 2 other worthy teams an opportunity to win the national championship. It's not a good system. I don't like how it's selected, but at least it affords 2 other teams that will have the resumes an opportunity to win a national championship, because this particular year, you've got 5 other teams with 1 loss that had just as good a resumes, generally speaking, and also not even counting a 13-0 Utah team. So what do you do with that? Well, it's the American way to play a playoff. That's what should be done.
Well, yeah, and that's figuring out that tricky, which it's never perfect. I mean, even
No.
the NCAA basketball tournament expanded from 64 to 68, and that was a big debate. I mean, why? 64 teams, 68, so we're never going to figure out the perfect number. It's just whether the team at the end who can grind it through and find itself victorious, are they a legitimate national champion? And do people recognize them as that? The only caution I would say in the game of football is the quarterback position is the most critical sports position. And I would argue of all team sports. And the more you expand this sport, it's not like basketball, it's not like hockey, it's not like any of these other sports. The more you expand a playoff, the more injuries you're probably going to see to that position. And you might get a juggernaut of a Georgia in the national championship game when Stetson Bennett got his knee tucked underneath him and he can't play. But they still won because they were up so much. So I would say that's just one caution I would say.
Yeah, the more football that's going to be played, the more opportunity for players to get injured. That's one of the main reasons why you see all these rule changes during this offseason that are being proposed, because you know what all those rule changes do? All of them eliminate plays from the game. So they are wanting to make the argument to anyone who's concerned about player safety and player health. We are limiting the number of plays during each game. Let's say it goes from an average of 122 to 114. So we've limited 8 more plays out of each game. They play 12 regular season games plus a conference championship game, etc. And if we knock out over the course of a season, if a team plays 15 games once it advances deep into the playoffs, we've eliminated 15 times 8, 120 plays out of a particular team's season. Therefore, we can justify adding more games because, Nick, my concern, among others, is that while we could never imagine a college football player opting out of a playoff game like they do currently, opt out of bowl games to prepare for the NFL draft, imagine if you are playing for an 8 seed in the playoffs and you have to win 4 consecutive games. You got to play 4 games to win the national championship. That's a lot of football.
Are you saying from like the quarterback perspective?
I'm saying from anybody's perspective that if you're a cornerback,
quarterback,
corner or a linebacker, any position, and you are going to be taken in the first round of the NFL draft, and you're looking at either I'm going to play 4 consecutive more football games.
So are you
Why not opt
suggesting
out?
are you suggesting that like NFL mock drafts are going to be inherently negative to college football playoff expansion because there's just more opportunity to get hurt?
Well, they could be counterproductive to players choosing to play.
So are you concerned with quarterbacks of national championship contenders sitting out an expanded playoff?
Again, whether they're quarterbacks or any position.
Well,
they don't
but
have to be quarterbacks.
It's not any position because the quarterback position in football is the most important position in all of team sports.
Well, I don't agree with that necessarily. I think there's an argument to be made. A pitcher, I think, controls a baseball game more than a quarterback controls a football game.
I don't think we're talking about like lesser than sports. Like baseball, I mean, pitchers can't even pitch a full game.
Yeah, but
nowadays.
the pitching position doesn't change. There's still a pitcher on the mound.
No,
and
but
he
there's still
controls.
like quarterbacks today. We see like
I'm not arguing a
yeah, no,
particular.
I get you.
I'm not arguing the starting pitcher versus the starting
Yeah.
quarterback, because the quarterback stays in the game the entire game as long as it's competitive. And pitchers in Major League Baseball pitch 5 innings now, starting pitchers, and then they're gone. I'm just talking about the pitcher's role. I would argue is more impactful on the game of baseball. But anyway, regardless, it is the most important position by far on the football field. The point I'm making, regardless of the position, but if you want to focus on quarterbacks, yes, there could be, if we see players opting out of bowl games, and certainly bowl games are just added games. Some say they're exhibition games. They're not exhibition games because they count on a team's record just like any other game during the season, but they are an additional game. And we see players opting out of those games because they deem them meaningless. Well, even though the playoffs are very meaningful, if you are a team that does not get a bye, you have to win 4 games to win the national championship. And there may be players that are looking at playing 4 more games. And we're talking about high leverage games. We're not talking about Ohio State playing another game against Rutgers or Toledo.
But you're considering this with the 12 team system.
Yes.
That's what you're.
Yeah.
Okay, so what would be the same argument from your standpoint in the 8-game system?
Well, there are not going to be any teams that are going to have to play 4 games. They're going to have to play 3 games.
Okay, so one less game would. So I like 4 games to 3 games. Like you're still. That's still on the same thing. That's still the same thing.
No, it's not the same thing. First of all, we're both making
so we're talking about
some
one
type
game,
of an assumption based on what other people are going to decide. So neither one of us know.
No, neither one of us know, but you're just talking about 1 game difference.
Exactly.
With the majority. So you're talking about 75. So you're talking about 25%.
There are players that choose not to play in bowl games, and that's only 1 game.
Yeah, but that still might be the championship game. So they're gonna go through the 2 or 3 games and then just sit out the championship game because it's.
Well, I wouldn't anticipate that. I would anticipate that they would make the decision before ever the playoffs ever started.
Okay, I'm not going to get into too much of an argument with this. I was just kind of curious about why. So, just in general, to wrap this up, you're pro 12-game playoff versus.
No.
So you would rather have BCS than 12?
No, I'd rather have an 8-team playoff.
No, but that's okay.
But I would rather have 12 than 4, and I would rather have 12 than 2.
So so yes, you would rather have 12 than the BCS.
Yes.
Okay, so it's not about. So for you, it's not about the 2 best teams playing on the biggest night of the sport.
Well, if every team plays to its ability, then we are going to get to that conclusion.
But you're more, well, I mean, I'm talking about just the 2 best teams.
Yes.
Because when you're talking about the college football
BCS
playoff,
didn't produce the 2 best teams every year.
No, it didn't. But most of them were undefeated.
No.
No?
Most of the teams that played in BCS championship games? No. Not most of them were undefeated.
Anyway, then you prove me wrong. But
I'm not trying to prove you wrong. I'm just answering questions.
No, I get it.
I don't even know what you were trying to prove. I thought you were just kind of having a discussion and asking me a bunch of questions about my thoughts about the various playoff formats. I didn't know that you were trying to prove any particular point.
I'm not trying to prove anything. I was just asking you we're going to a 12-team expansion.
Yes.
You are a favor of the 8-team expansion.
But that's not happening.
No, it's not
But
happening.
that's what I would do. If we
and
were
I guess this is the only thing and then I can wrap this up.
Well, let me just say this real quick, Nick. If we were playing video games and we weren't playing with actual humans that get hurt, I would like 16 teams. Because then we eliminate the buys, and 16 out of 131 is still an elite group of teams.
Yeah, but I'm not talking about 16 teams. Like, does that make sense? Like, I don't know, where did you pull the 16 from?
Because you just started to make a statement that I was for 12. And I was just clarifying.
No, I didn't say you were for 12. I said you were for 8, and they are going to expand it to 12. And then you just said, so I don't understand that at all.
Anyway, we're at 4. It's being expanded to 12. I would expand it to 8 instead. Okay, is that clear?
Yeah,
Okay.
That's clear.
Okay.
I said it before. So,
all right, Nick.
All right, thanks, Mark.
Thanks for the call. Appreciate it. All right, Jason, thank you so much for the super sticker, the famed super sticker. Folks, you can all get in on that one. That's a good one. The super sticker from Jason. Thank you so much for being here. Jason shows up just about every live show, so we appreciate that. Especially since, as you guys well know, we don't have a live stream schedule. And one of the reasons why we don't is because I've got the Big Ten show on Monday night at 6, a USC show Monday night at 11, in Iowa Tuesday at 5:30, Nebraska Tuesday at 7, in addition to the SEC at noon on Tuesday. Then on Wednesday, we've got typically Ohio State at 11 in the morning, then Oklahoma at 12:30, Michigan at 5, Florida State at 6, Miami at 7, then Miami at 8 o'clock on Thursday, and typically West Virginia Friday at 8. So by the time we go through all those team live streams that are at exact times throughout the week, it's difficult for me to find times that I can definitely say I'm going to be here. Because otherwise, I would love to say we're doing a Sunday, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday at 8 o'clock at night, every Sunday, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. But unfortunately, we can't do that. So I appreciate you guys being flexible, subscribing to the channel, hit that bell for the notifications. That way, you know when we go live. And I can just about guarantee that's what Jason does. And that's why he's here almost all the time. So Jason, thank you so much for that. And then I believe I got to find this super chat. Georgia Reload, who's really showing up tonight. We appreciate you, Georgia Reload. Jason, I'll see your 10 and raise your 20. Thank you so much for that, Georgia Reload. We hope that you catch much of our content that we post on the Georgia and SEC channels, Georgia Reload, because we just had a conversation the other day with Anthony Dasher from Rivals, and we have reviewed all the Georgia positions on offense and defense. So we hope that many of you just, let's say, subscribe on the main channel, that your favorite teams are being covered on other channels, and we produce a ton of content. So even beyond what we do here on the main channel, we provide content on all those other channels. And we've got, there's about 10 or 12 of them that we deliver content on a regular basis, almost every day. So when you look at just, let's say, spring updates with position previews, we've already done Alabama, Kentucky, Georgia, Tennessee, Auburn, Texas A&M, Ohio State, Michigan, Miami, Florida State, Clemson. We're ready to start Oklahoma, Texas, Oregon, and we will get to some other ones. We've done Penn State as well. All right. We got Corey on the line. Corey, what's going on tonight?
Hey, I'm doing pretty well, Mark. How are you?
I am doing just fine. I appreciate your patience.
Oh, no problem. It's a pleasure to be on. I'm honored, actually. You guys are awesome. Been listening to your show for a couple of years, and big fan. I figured I'd chime in and share some of my thoughts.
Well, it's good to hear from you.
Yeah, thank you. Well, first I'd like to mention the realignment, and I think I find it kind of curious and fascinating. Washington and Oregon and Florida State and Clemson are like the four big fish, it looks like, and Miami. And if you were the Big Ten, just kind of asking you too, would you rather have Oregon and Washington, or would you rather have Florida State and Clemson? Because I can make the argument, I'd rather have Washington and Oregon based on their on-field performance, and I think you get a bigger market there.
All right.
What do you think?
So I don't think the Big Ten can go wrong in either direction. However, I'm on record as saying that if I'm the Big Ten and I'm only going to add 2 schools, and Notre Dame is not going to be one of them, because that, of course, would be my number one priority.
Oh, absolutely.
But after Notre Dame, it would be actually Florida State and Miami.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you do open up the Southern Pipeline too, and I think that would help in recruiting.
Yes.
I guess I'm a little biased. I always like the Pac-12. I'm a big Michigan fan, by the way, and I try to keep it rational. I know a lot of fans that I feel like we get a little unbiased, and we let our opinions kind of get the best of us. But to be completely honest, I know a lot of people in the chat talk about how good Michigan is, and if you really think about it, since like 1980. Michigan really hasn't been like that good of a program. They lose a lot of bowl games. They have a lot of 8-4, 9-3 seasons. And if you actually take like before the World War II era, Michigan's like a top 20 program. And I think they get kind of mentioned as like a top 5-10. I know they get the really good ratings, but if you really break it down, I don't think they're that good of a program, personally.
Wow. So Corey, you as a Michigan fan is telling me that Michigan is generally like a top 20 program since 1980?
I would say so. Yeah, because they've had a lot of lean years there.
Sure. They have.
With Rich Rodriguez, they went 3-9,
Sure.
5-7, 7-6.
Yeah, I know all the records.
Yeah. And when they play out of conference games, like they did like a couple home and homes with Washington and Oregon, and when they play bowl games, they don't play well. They lose more times than not.
All right. So here's my take on, as I throw up some more merchandise shops. Okay. Here's my take on Michigan football going back to that point. So, of course, Bo Schembechler was the coach in 1980. So that was his 12th season at that point. So if we take the entire Bo era, of course, they, along with Ohio State, dominated the Big Ten for most of that time. And if
Hayden Fry too
kind of had the edge during that time, you would have to say Michigan slightly. So all through the 70s, deep into the 80s, basically for his entire tenure, it's pretty impressive to see how consistent he was finishing in the top 10 in the nation. I'm going to say in 21 seasons, he finished in the top 10 like 16 times. So they consistently were big winners. They never won a national championship, and he went 2-8 in the Rose Bowl, and he lost a lot of big bowl games. Yes. But they were consistent winners. They were consistently in the top 10. So during Bo's time, they were a top 5 or 6 program. Now, once we push past that, of course, Gary Moeller took over and he maintained that. And they went to, those 2 Rose Bowls in 92, 93, won one of them, and had 2 extremely good seasons there in the top 10. Then, of course, Lloyd Carr took over, and his first handful of seasons couple seasons weren't successful, except for beating Ohio State. And then, of course, he wins a national championship in 1997. And then throughout the rest of the 90s, in through the rest of his tenure, 9-3 is pretty much where he was. They had a really good year in 99 when they won the Orange Bowl and beat Alabama. And of course, 06 was a really good season. 03 was a really good season. But pretty much a 9-3
Right.
stretch. And then, of course, from 08 through 14, what's that, 7 seasons, they were awful. They barely finished 500. I think they're like 3 or 4 games over 500 and well under 500 in the Big Ten under Brady Hoke and Rich Rod. Now we've got Harbaugh, he's been 9-3 pretty consistently up until now, peaking the last 2 seasons. So I would give them much more credit than a top 20 program in the last 45 years or so.
That's fair. Maybe you're right, because I mean, them and Notre Dame, they usually get slotted in bowl games they probably shouldn't be in. Like, for example, like in 2019, it actually should have been Michigan playing Auburn and Minnesota playing Alabama, but obviously because of the ratings and Saban Harbaugh matchup, they were going to slot those two together.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, if Michigan definitely would have gave Auburn a game that year. But I kind of wanted to also talk about that 08 season. I find that season very interesting because I know there were so many teams that had a chance to play for the national championship. And I just found it kind of interesting that USC didn't have a chance to play for that. I know their only loss was that Thursday night game against Jacquizz Rodgers and Oregon State. But if you looked at their team, they were loaded that year. They had Cushing, Maluga, Matthews at linebacker, Mays at their defense was insane. And they had the most NFL talent I probably have ever seen. I remember they played Ohio State too that year. They just thrashed them. It was impressive. And it was just kind of a bummer. They didn't get a chance to play Florida. That would have been a really cool game. Who do you think would have won that game if they played each other?
Ooh, wow.
That would have been a good one.
I don't know if you heard me comment to an earlier caller that, I'm looking through each and every season in 2008, take away the evaluation of talent and just look at the results on the field and the resumes. And you had Florida, Oklahoma, Texas, Texas Tech, Penn State, USC, all had one loss.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, we're not going to consider Boise State. They had one loss, but played an inferior schedule. And then Utah was 13-0 and, of course, beat Alabama in the Sugar Bowl. So, my goodness, if there's a season that needed a playoff, people talk about what a mess 2007 was. I would argue that 2008 was a mess in terms of trying to determine who should be playing in that game. But if you're just looking at evaluating talent on rosters, then I would have wanted to see Florida and USC play. And I think I would have leaned USC.
Yeah, I agree. But yeah, I'll tell you what, that's the beauty of college football. I feel like the debate at the end of the year kind of makes it fun. You almost have like that mythical national championship. And there was kind of a beauty to that, in my opinion. And I mean, obviously you lost that, and I understand completely, especially with all the money and
I so much hate to agree with you on this point, Corey, because for my entire life, I was a 16-year-old writing like a 12,000 word paper on, implementing a college football playoff. So I've wanted this forever, but I would have to agree that there was something charming about debating who won the national championship.
Right. And it was, there was like the whole BCS era was so interesting. I did a little exercise myself where I wrote down like the teams that would have made the playoff, and it's just a lot of fun to even kind of play that out. But another thing too about conference realignment, do you think we're going to get to the point where it's going to be like AFC, NFC, NFL? Like, do you think it's going to be like 2 24-team leagues? Or do you think the other conferences have a chance to kind of stay afloat?
Well, I've said this from the very beginning of this last round of expansion, starting with Oklahoma, Texas, that it was my thought, especially once the Big Ten made its move with USC, UCLA, that there are 2 basic motivators for both the SEC and the Big Ten. Number one would be just assessing the field and seeing, for example, with the Big Ten looking at Oregon and Washington, do those programs bring value to our conference? And that, of course, includes once we add them and renegotiate a rights deal, a media rights deal, then do they add value? But even beyond that, do we believe that they add value in terms of TV market, recruiting footprint, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? The school brand, the endowments, everything involved. So that's the first assessment I think that the SEC and the Big Ten make, of course, in any conference. But the added layer to what the SEC and the Big Ten are doing that may even push beyond that would be, well, if the SEC goes and makes a big move, even if the Big Ten is assessing the rest of the field and thinking, they don't add value and we wouldn't normally make this move, we have to counterpunch, or we're going to see, if the SEC would somehow grab Miami, Florida State, and Clemson, and let's say North Carolina to make it an even 4, then I would think that the Big Ten would need to counter that.
Yeah. It's kind of like a dog-eat-dog world. I feel like Greg Sankey's like a shark, and I feel like if the Big Ten doesn't act, the SEC may gobble up a lot of those powers, even out west. I know it sounds a little far-fetched right now, but I could see that. And I feel like we're going to get to the point where they're going to have no choice but to take these other schools. And I think it's eventually going to turn into like divisions within the conference. Like you'll have like a Big Ten West, a Big Ten
Absolutely.
Southwest and stuff like that. And I think it's basically just going to be the 5 conferences, but they're just going to be under 2 names. And I think you're going to have the winner of the Big Ten play the winner of the SEC. I don't know if that's good for the sport, but I just think that's the way it's going to kind of play out.
Yeah, I don't think it's good for the sport. I do think that there's a certain regional flavor that we're losing, that is not just the football, but the football is reflective of the culture, the values, the food, the music, just the way of life in these various parts of the country. And when they all come together to play non-conference games and bowl games and playoff games, then it becomes interesting. But when the Big Ten stretches from coast to coast, it's no longer the Midwest. And when the Big 12 has schools from Florida and Ohio, it's no longer kind of the Dust Bowl Plains Conference. And yes, and when the Pac-12 extends out to Dallas and grabs SMU just to fill a spot, then it's no longer the Pacific 10 or 12. It's gone all over the map. So that's what we've seen.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I figured I'd let some other callers get on the line here. I figured I took up too much time, but I really do appreciate you taking my phone call.
Well, thank you, Corey. I did find it interesting that I found myself in a place where I was trying to convince a Michigan fan that their program is better than what the Michigan fan thinks it is.
Yeah, I'll tell you, man, it's been some tough years. I've really enjoyed the last couple of years, but I try to call it like I see it. Maybe I'm a little too tough on my Wolverines, but yeah, I guess that's a fanatic for you.
Yeah, I do think that you have a fringe top 10 program circa 1980. And
yeah, that's fair. I might get on board with that. I'll have to dig into the research a little more. I just wish they won more bowl games, honestly. They're like 12, 13 games below 500 in bowl games, and I think they matter because, you're playing, teams from other conferences, and I think that's how you should be judged because there are so many years there where I thought the Big Ten was really down, especially like before Harbaugh took over at Michigan, and he had like those Tressel years. I mean, there were years where Ohio State, they had some pretty good teams, but they just didn't really have any competition during that era. From like
and you're right.
06 to like 11, 12. I don't know.
Yep. For as much as people want to dismiss bowl games, they're remembered. That people remember, fan bases remember their bowl games. You may not remember the Wisconsin game from 2001, but you're going to remember, we played Tennessee in the Citrus Bowl in 2001. You're going to remember all your bowl games.
Right. And they draw huge numbers.
And those records come up when fans start to argue, we've got a better bowl record than you do. And they're the same fans that say, these bowl games are meaningless. But then they're citing bowl games as it being a big deal that we got a better bowl record than you, or our coach has a better bowl record than you do, than your coach.
Yeah. I feel like I also like the SEC. Like, I mean, the South is so entrenched with football, and obviously more people have moved down there for various reasons. A lot of Fortune 500 companies move down there. I wonder if there's ever going to be a day where, you know, people start moving to different parts of the country. Because, I mean, the SEC honestly is getting so dominant where I remember when I first started watching football in like the mid to late 90s, there was a little bit more symmetry between teams. Like Colorado had good teams and, you know, teams like that. But I feel like now it's like the 8th best SEC team is like better than like the 3rd place Big Ten team or the 2nd place ACC team. Like, I truly believe if they were pitted on a field, I think like an Arkansas would beat like I don't know, like a Florida State, for example. Like, they'd be on the same field with them. But here's Florida State going 10-3 and Arkansas going 6-6. You know.
Yeah. Well, I don't completely agree with that, but I don't think you're too far off.
Yeah.
All right, Corey.
All right. Well, thank you. Thanks
so much
again.
for calling in. Yeah, thank you. Have a good night.
You too.
Steve Dace Burner, thank you so much for the contribution. Very nice of you. Thank you. Mark, you have got to stop cutting callers off. Okay, that's the first time that's ever been stated to me. If anything, I'd leave them on too long. Who am I cutting off? Who was I cutting off tonight? There's only a few different reasons why I start to cut people off. Number one, they've made that point and they've made it for like the 4th time and they just make it using a few different words, but they've made it incessantly. So that's one reason why I start to cut people off, because, okay, you've made that point and you've made it clear. So we got it. Other times when I know that the audience has checked out and that particular caller isn't even making any sense to me, or I don't get their point, or even if I get their point and follow their line of reasoning, it's just too difficult for everyone else to follow. There are a few different reasons why. Yes, I make, but if anything, I get accused of being too kind and too nice. Anyway, so Steve Dace Burner, of course, I'm going to read your entire super chat for your contribution here. Stop cutting callers off when they make a point that you don't feel addressing. Okay, I don't really understand that. When a caller makes a point, I'm either going to agree with them, or I'm going to disagree with them, or I'm going to say, well, your point has some merit, but other points within your point, I have an argument against. So it's going to be a combination of one of those 3 things. So I don't know that anybody states anything that I don't feel like addressing. If you want to move on to other callers, make a time limit like 3 minutes. Yeah, we're not going to put an artificial time on anything, because there are callers. You can have an interesting call for 20 minutes. You can have a horrible call for 30 seconds. All right. Otherwise, it's rude to just cut them off and say thanks for the call. Okay. Again, yeah. Thank you, Steve Dace Burner. I appreciate it. I would like to tell you that I'm going to take that to heart, but I'm not. So I don't really see any validity in anything that you've had to say there. But thank you. I appreciate it. Hope that doesn't offend you. I'm just being truthful. All right. Where are we in the chat? Twisted Roosters here. Good to see you. George says, Jason, I think Mark is doing great. I was interested to see if anybody had any feedback on the response I just made to Steve Dace Burner. And again, Steve, thank you so much, Steve Dace Burner, for responding here and for your contribution, of course. And your opinion is your opinion. And so I appreciate you stating it there. All right. All right. Anything else here in the chat? I did notice quite the debate going on between many of you. I don't know specific handles because I wasn't really taking that much note. There was probably 10 times more than what I actually saw, but between Tony Altamore and some of you. So I just ask that you be kind to each other. When I say kind, I don't mean you need to be complimenting each other. Just be civil in your arguments. No name calling, please. I don't necessarily know. I think I did see a bit of name calling there. So thank you for that. Lawrence, yes. Sandra says, hang up quicker, Mark. Yes, maybe that's the answer to it right there. Oh, Tim is saying that was not Tony. It was a fake. Okay, that's not good because I thought it was Tony, and not that I really saw what he was. I just could tell there was arguments going on, but I didn't see anything that was that egregious. All right, well that's not good, folks. If you're gonna make a spoof account, you can do that to my expense because I've seen 4 or 5 of those. Well, I think we've hit the end of the line, folks. Nobody else on the line. Again, look at the merch right there. Even if you aren't that intrigued by it, just give it a look. Give it a look. Let's put the link in the chat here. Because I will say that Joey has done a remarkable job with our merchandise. And we have worked pretty hard in doing our best to find an affordable price, but still finding quality. We wanted to strike that balance with quality and still making it affordable. And really, the margin is rather slim, so we can't charge much less. We're making pennies on that because the idea and the intent of the merchandise is not for. Of course, I would love to make $1 million. Of course, we all want to make money. That's why we're in business. That's why we go to jobs. However, the number one intent here, because the margin is very slim, is to get the word out for people to recognize the voice of college football, for you to be a walking banner for us while also wearing some fine clothing or a coffee mug or whatever it might be. So again, I have left the link in the chat. Just give it a look, and we appreciate it. Oh, Steve Day Spurner, I appreciate you. So this is a class act right here, because Steve Day Spurner comes back and says, Mark, still love you. When's the next The One? Unfortunately, you did have to ask about that, and I will address that. So for as much as we love to have Steve Dace on here, and I still make my frequent appearances almost every Tuesday on the Michigan podcast, he pretty much suspends me during basketball, the March Madness time. But other than that, I'm on there almost every Tuesday. Yes, we are suspending The One. It's just not been. So this is what started here in terms of The One. This is how this got started. Was a ton of you, and I appreciate your feedback and that you enjoy Stephen and my conversations, that I had so many people saying, Mark, you and Steve need to do a regular segment. So I thought, well, there's a lot of people saying that. The segments typically do well. And so I thought, well, I should be able to cover the cost of having Steve on by having this much success in airing this segment, both through the YouTube ads and then also the contributions. But I miscalculated that by far. So after 7 weeks of losing money, we just couldn't continue. So unfortunately, we are going to cancel that. We have canceled it. And unfortunately, I just tell Steve this week, hey, we need to put this on hold. And unfortunately, we can't any longer go forward with the segment, The One. But thank you so much for asking. This is my intent, that we bring it back in August, and hopefully there's going to be more interest and more support for it. I was off on my estimation because I thought we would have tremendous support for that show. Twisted Rooster looking at that red hat. I like that red hat too. I do as well. And I'm not a hat guy. I like how hats look. Like I like the hat itself. At one point, I must have had like 30 hats on a shelf, but I never wore any of them. I'm not a hat guy. Like I don't wear a hat. I never wear hats, but I do like the look of the hat. And I know a lot of people like hats, but yeah. So that's those are some options right there. You've got you got the women's racerback voice of college football tank top. You've got the, we had a meeting and the yoga pants were included because some women said, "Hey, you will kill it with yoga leggings." And I said, "Yeah, I see women wearing them all the time, so that's a big deal." I just had a friend of mine who I didn't know ordered some stuff text me the other day and say that he had a picture of himself in an item that he liked. I like that white shirt right there. And we also went through the process of ordering some of this stuff. So I ordered like 7 or 8 things. I had my daughter order some stuff. I had some friends order some stuff because I just wanted to make sure that the transactions worked, that the merchandise arrived in a reasonable amount of time and looked good and all of those things as well. So there you go. We hope all this does well. If nothing else, grab yourself a mug. All right. Okay, so we will definitely be back here on Monday at 6 for the Big Ten live show. That's Monday at 6 Eastern. And of course, we're going to produce all sorts of college football top content before that. Jason says you need beer helmets, the ones that hold 2 beer cans. Okay, we'll look into that. Joey, you out there, Joey? Joey looks into all that for me. One other thing, FSU, no. Thank you so much for that. We'll check it out. I also wanted to mention off the merchandise line, but again, you guys could all, believe me, check out the merch. I decided today, hey, let's do this. We're going to have a Michigan watch party for the spring game. So on April 1st, Michigan is the only major team in the country playing a spring game. And then the next Saturday and the rest of the Saturdays in April, there's 15, 20, 25 major teams every week playing spring games. So believe me, I will be here throughout the days on Saturdays, the days and nights during the month of April, breaking down the spring games, doing live shows and all of that. And also watch parties. This particular watch party, for sure, we'll start with this one. We're going to do on Patreon, but it's going to be open to everyone. So we're going to do it on Patreon. We're going to make it available to everyone. So you can join us on Patreon, open to everyone, and we're going to watch the Michigan spring game together. All right, so that should be a good time. So hopefully that all makes sense. So again, it's on Patreon, but it's open to you and everybody else. And yes, to Real MVP, we understand Kentucky is not having a spring game again. All right, folks, appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. We will catch up with you soon. Also, did anyone catch what did I call it? The Power Block that aired the other night from midnight all the way through the night. Anybody catch that? So what we did there was I edited together programming for 6 hours and we aired it as a live stream. And I had the idea, well, let's see how this works. We're going to air all this programming overnight and people can come into the chat and talk. And if you want to watch some of the programming, you can do that as well. FSU Noam says. So I'm going to try that at different times. So that was the overnight. going to try like an early morning one, see how that works out, and we'll see how people receive it. I think we maxed out at 45 people watching overnight, but in total, like 800 or 900. So, all right. I can tell when I've hit a wall, and I've hit a wall. My words take some time to come out of my mouth. So thank you so much for being here again. It's April 1st, Michigan spring game. That is no April Fool's joke, Patreon, but it is open to everyone. And again, grab yourself some merch and check it out at thevoiceofcollegefootball.com. We have all sorts of content that will be coming out over the next few days. I will be live Monday at 6 Eastern for sure, and probably sometime before that. So we thank you for having those notifications turned on to join all of us right here at the Voice of College Football. We'll see you soon.